Hey, they got married literally like on top of Mateo's dead body, bro. That's so fucked up. You're telling me y'all couldn't go to the next room? Y'all couldn't do this shit in the hallway? This poor man, you don't even know if he's like fully dead yet. This man's bleeding out, hearing his wife like marry another dude. That's dirty. Hey, my name's Kaylee. Thanks for clicking on the video. This is Read, Rant, Review, where, you guessed it, I read books and I do rant reviews. Today we're going to be talking about Promises and Pomegranates. This is a 2021 dark romance fantasy, dark mythology romance that is currently, as of November 4th, 2024, sitting at a 3.5 on Goodreads with 65,000 ratings. I gave it a 2.5. I would have given it closer to a 4 if not for the glaring problems that are with this book. It's good writing. It's just like, why, man? You know, we'll unpack that though. If you have no idea what this book is about, real quick, it is a hitman for hire who works for a big mafia family in Boston. Said hitman is blackmailed into marrying said family in Boston, mafia family in Boston's eldest daughter, Elena. And shenanigans ensue. In addition to being dark romance, this is also claimed to be a Persephone and Hades retelling. Sav R Miller has an entire series dedicated to mythological retellings, and while there is a lot of reference, a lot of allusion to mythology in this book, there's a lot of contention actually within the Goodreads community in that comment section about if this is actually that or not. So do with this information what you will. Before we get into the actual book, into this actual rant review, I do just want to give 4 comments. The first one being a disclaimer, the other 3 being content warnings. The disclaimer being, as I said, I'm not going to be talking super highly of this book. I'll give praise where praise is due, but I will also be critiquing it heavily. So this is not for Sav, this is not for stans of her or this book or anything like that, okay? For the content warnings, the first one being that there is a lot of gore in this book. There's a lot of violence. Again, hey, mafia hitman, what do you expect? I didn't dock at any points for that, but if you choose to read this book on your own, I just want you to be aware I will not be detailing a lot of that in this review. I will detail some of it so you get the point, but the other 90% of gore that is discussed, you will have to read this on your own to get that. Content warning number 2 is I feel like the entire basis of this relationship that is the focal point of this book is dubious consent, or dubcon. If you are unfamiliar with what that term is, it's kind of this gray area between consent and non-consent. I want to, but I won't admit it, or I want to, but I won't tell the main male character that. So it kind of seems like non-consent, but I am consenting internally, or like I'm kind of wishy-washy, and it's this gray area in romance novels called dubcon. So if you love that, this is your jam. If that triggers you, heads up. And then lastly, what I would consider to be the most problematic, the most troubling, the most gave me the ick. I'm gonna get serious with you on this one. The main male character, Dr. Cal Anderson, Dr. Death, the hitman. He is 32 years old and he marries Elena, who is 20. He has known her since she was an infant. And he, multiple times throughout the book, is like, I never looked at her that way. I never even talked to her. We never even da-da-da-da-da until she was 18 and I let my depravity win. Sure. Okay. But, right? That's kind of ick. But also his pet name, his little lovey nickname for her is Little One. What? Okay, so that's minus a star right there off the bat. Yeah, in case you're wondering where I'm coming from, -1 off the bat, my guy. That is fucking gross. Not only that, so hey, if you're cool with that age gap, right, that 12-year age gap, which, hey, sidebar, I'm cool with an age gap. Just like let her frontal lobe finish developing. You want to give me the same age gap, but like later in life, if it was a 25-year-old and 37, as long as they didn't know each other, like when she was a literal baby, I'd be okay with it. Even Little One, I think I'd be okay with that nickname under literally any other circumstance. So anyway, -1. But if you are cool with that, for some godforsaken reason, you sick fuck, sorry, that was a little extreme. If you're cool with that though, it is very explicitly though discussed throughout the book that When he was 13, when Cal was 13, he was groomed by an adult woman. Okay, so that one's not, you can't really write that one off and play dumb about it. That one's just straight up discussion of grooming. So if you're sensitive to that, if you're sensitive to adults being creeps, heads up. With those being said, with all of that being said, let's get into it. We open our book. Cal, again, Dr. Callum Anderson, Dr. Death. He is in Raphael Ricci's office. Raphael Ricci is the mafia don, the mafia head boss, head honcho boss man dude guy. He's in his office and they're talking. And it is revealed that Cal had intercourse with Raphael's oldest daughter, Elena, on her 20th birthday 8 weeks ago. Somebody recorded it and somebody delivered that recording on a USB stick directly to Cal's doorstep, meaning they knew exactly where he lived. There was no postage, leaving an ominous threat of blackmail that is never really explicitly said, other than she's in danger. And so Cal goes to Raphael and he's like, hey, this happened. Raphael's a little pissed about it because it turns out, in true Godfather fashion, this is happening on the day of his daughter's wedding. Elena is to be married to Matteo De Luca, who is the heir to a media firm in Boston. The Riccis historically had been a very well-respected mafia family in Boston until recent years, where organized crime has, seen a decline, and the mafia families had all kind of joined together in this agreement to not do drug trafficking. And so he's like kind of lost respect, he's kind of lost some money, and he's kind of like, I don't know, not as big of a dude on the block as he used to be. In an attempt to merge the families, build a name again, all this other stuff, he is like reaching outside of the crime circles, the crime syndicates, trying to make connections with other very rich families in the area, being the media firm. So pretty much from Elena's birth, she has been aligned to be married to Matteo. That's always been the gig. So when this video comes out of Elena and Callum having intercourse, it throws that plan to shit. If the elders, who are the elders? I don't know mafia stuff, bro. I'm assuming it's like the oldest people of all of the like mafia families are on a council together. I don't know. If the elders find out about her screwing over, right, these connections so badly, they will murder her. On top of the blackmail that's already happening that is like ambiguous and I don't know what the blackmail is, it's threatening her. Cal and Raphael come to a decision that Cal will marry Elena instead. Raphael requests Cal's protection of her, and he says, what do you want in return? You marry my daughter, you protect her, you keep her, keep her safe. Favors are reciprocated. Like, you're not going to do anything for free. And Cal says, I want her soul. Hello? Cool. Cool. Cut to Elena's perspective. She is in the bridal suite getting ready for her wedding to Matteo that she thinks is still happening. So her mom, her aunties, her grandma, her sisters, they're all hanging out, doing her hair, getting her into her dress, and it's very cute. But you learn very quickly the family dynamic, that Elena is kind of the black sheep of the family, right? She's not this like super skinny ballet girl like her sisters are. She doesn't look like her mother. She's just kind of this not up to par to the rest of her family, right? She kind of feels like an outsider, especially in regard to her mom and her grandma, but she's very, very close to her sisters. Like, they're best friends. As they're about to finish getting ready and head over to the church to go and get the church ready, Marceline comes in. Marceline, hey, do I have any Adventure Time fans? Opposite of Adventure Time Marceline, by the way. She's like a little redhead. Anyway, Marceline comes in. Marceline is a reoccurring character in this book that I can only describe as like Callum's assistant. She comes in and she says, oh my God, Matteo needs you. He needs you right now. He won't talk to anybody else. Please come with me. So Elena does, and the rest of her, like, I was going to say gal pals. The rest of the women in her family go to the church to get ready while Elena goes to find Matteo. She finds him. She goes into this bedroom. She says, what's up? What do you need? Homeboy's laid up in the bed, tucked under the covers, on death's doorstep, and she's like, oh my God, are you good? Like, what is going on? As she's asking what's happening, and Matteo is just like looking off, like 1,000-mile stare, 1,000-yard stare. She hears a voice behind her, and he says, "I think it's food poisoning. What do you think it is, little one?" It's Cal. She's like, "What did you do?" Knowing off the bat that, again, Cal is a doctor, like a legitimate, went to John Hopkins doctor. If he sees a man dying in front of him and doesn't help, she knows he had something to do with it. And also, she knows Cal's job in regard to her family. Like, she knows very, very well what his role is and the things that he has done. She knows that he is Dr. Death. So she's like, "What is happening?" He doesn't say anything other than just, "That sucks, I guess. Like, he's hurting. I think it's food poisoning." Cut back to Cal's perspective, and Elena approaches Mateo's body. She goes up to him and she starts like sniffling. And Cal's watching, and he's like, "I didn't think they liked each other. Like, I don't know what's going on." And he's hearing like the, and it turns out that this bitch is smelling blood. She smells the blood from Mateo's stab wound in his ribs that is like covered by the blanket. So she peels it back and she says, "This was insurance?" Cal's like, "What?" She's like, "Yeah, like you poisoned him or you did something, but like this is insurance, right? Like if that didn't work, then this would." And Cal is like, "That's so hot. That's my girl. She's so depraved." It's like so weird. But she's not upset by Mateo's death at all. 20 years old, knowing her entire life that she was sworn to be married to this man who was abusive. Her and Mateo had gotten in so many fist fights, and he was very, very violent, and anytime that they had any arguments, it would result in that. And our girl, Elena, she's a scrappy little lady, which I love, by the way. Personal favorite trait to have in a main female character. I love a bitch that can fight. And so she's like broken his jaw a bunch of times. He's had missing teeth. She broke his nose. Like, she has always stood up for herself to Mateo. And so it's not the worst thing that he's dead, right? Like, this isn't the worst thing to get out of. But as she is looking at Mateo's body, Cal is watching her. Marceline comes in to give Cal his doctor bag to clean up Mateo's body. Cal says, "Hey, Marceline, this is my wife, Elena." Elena says, "Excuse me?" And as she is trying to confront Cal about this weird-ass thing that he says, her father, Raphael, and a priest walk in, and they force her to marry Callum. And by force, I mean, she tries to run away. She puts up a fight. She says this isn't right. She says, like, "What the fuck, Dad?" She's like, "I don't want to do this." She's screaming. She's fighting. She's, like, beating the out of Callum, and he eventually ends up with her in a chokehold, essentially, and like holding her hip to him, and he whispers in her ear, and he says, "You better do this. I'm helping you, and if you don't agree to this, I will kill your family one by one." Cool. So she goes along with it because she doesn't have a choice. So they get married. The priest, by the way, the entire time is like freaking out and yelling at Raphael of like, "What are you getting me into?" It's all in Italian. I don't know what's really happening. But he's like, "What is this? This isn't legitimate." And then like, whatever. In the middle of the priest going through the actual ceremony, after Cal threatens her, they just start making out. And the whole time, like, he has her body pressed to him, and she's like, "I can feel his downstairs region, and like, I want him so badly, but like, I shouldn't want him," and like all this other stuff. And it's, again, very dubious consent, where she's like, "I don't want him. Well, no, I do want him, but I shouldn't want him, but I do." And it's 400 pages of that. So they end up making out in the middle of the ceremony, and the priest is like, "Hey, let's like finish your vows first." They get married. At the end of the ceremony, she talks to her dad. The priest leaves, and it's her dad, Cal, Elena, and Mateo's dead body. Hey, they got married literally like on top of Mateo's dead body, bro. That's so fucked up. You're telling me y'all couldn't go to the next room? Y'all couldn't do this shit in the hallway? This poor man, you don't even know if he's like fully dead yet. This man's bleeding out, hearing his wife like marry another dude. That's dirty, bro. That's so dirty. So it's the three of them in this room. Not Mateo. 4 of them, I guess, counting the fucking dead guy. But it's the three of them in this room. And she's like, "Dad, like Cal killed Mateo. Like Cal ruined this deal that you had with the DeLucas. Like, why would you marry me off to him? Like, what is even going on?" And he's like, he didn't ruin the deal with the DeLucas. You did when you fucked him. And he's like totally blaming Elena for having sex with Cal, even though, hey, might I remind you, 20 years old, 32 years old. He's like, I trusted you. I thought that you would be the perfect person for this. And like, now we all have to pay for your fuck ups. So yeah, you got married to Cal. Deal with it. And it's like, oh, okay. I guess that's what's happening. In the next chapter, we cut back to Cal's POV, and he's at Elena's house because he, so kindly, as he discusses, he says something about clipping a bird's wings and, like, preventing her from running away. You have to, like, meet in the middle. And so he takes her home, like, to her family home so that she can pack a bag and say goodbye to her parents and sisters. It kind of felt gross, I'm not gonna lie. So she does, right? She's there, she's packing, he's in the living room. Immediately, we're introduced to this idea that Cal gets overstimulated. He did in the first chapter as well, where he was hearing Raphael talk to him, where it was like the way that the ice clinked and the way that he put his glass down and the way that he would like smack his mouth, basically. He was losing his mind and just thinking of all the ways that he could kill the dude. But in this chapter, he's sitting there in the living room and he hears the grandfather clock ticking. And it is not in pace and time with his watch. And so the ticking of the two are like disjointed and he's losing his mind over it. Like he's getting irrationally angry. And so as he is like thinking about these seconds and this clicking and this like, he's losing his mind. Her two little sisters, Ariana and something, they're talking pretty much crap to him. They're like, why did you marry our sister? Where's Mateo? Like, I thought she should have married Mateo and blah, 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 blah. And there's all this back and forth. Until they get to the point where they compare them and they say, yeah, she would have been better off with Mateo. And in that moment, he decides to say, don't you ever speak of my wife and I again in comparison to Mateo, unless it's saying how much better I am than him. He takes off his Rolex, he throws it on the ground, and he shoots the watch. He shoots his watch in front of these two girls in a house. And nobody bats an eye. The girls don't react. No butler comes running. No family members come running of like wondering what the gunshot was. I know we're in the mafia. Like, don't get me wrong. I understand the the context of where we are. But you're telling me not one singular motherfucker says, oh my God, there was an unexpected gunshot. Let's investigate. And he goes upstairs to talk to his business partner, Jonas. Jonas is an old buddy that he had like bailed out of jail a very, very long time ago. And it's the only lasting relationship that he has. And so although Jonas annoys him, he maintains it. And he's the one that's over cleaning up Mateo's body while Cal is there with Elena trying to take her home. As he's like on this phone call, he starts hearing some weird commotion in Elena's bedroom. He opens the door, and I'll go ahead and read you this because I think this is important for like character building and like understanding the situations that we're getting into. So hanging up and pocketing my phone before giving Jonas an answer, I step inside, gritting my teeth when my gaze connects with that of Elena's mother. Even being in the same room as her makes my lungs feel like they've caught fire and I'm trying to breathe through the singed rubble. Carmen's eyebrows knit together when she sees me, the tan skin around them remaining perfectly still. What the hell have you done, Callum? She hisses, making my hands ache as they curl around empty air. Why is my daughter not marrying Mateo DeLuca right now? Elena chose to marry me instead. You fucked her, didn't you? You knew that if you screwed her, you'd screw me over too. You've just been waiting for your opportunity. She chose to marry me of her own free will. Oh, and I'm sure Mateo was just all too happy to step aside. With her, it's always been about the reaction. She knows what buttons of mine to push and how hard to push them until I pounce. Once upon a time, it was almost a game that we played. She digged beneath my skin with her quips and harsh words, her jealousy and spite, and like a fucking lamb, I'd follow her right to the slaughter. I smirk, not bothering to answer as I sweep the room, noting the half-cocked balcony door just behind her. The layout of this room is seared into my memory, its white walls much more familiar to me than that of my actual home. The books on the built-in bookshelf, ones I've mentioned over the years. Hey, grooming. Their presence gives me pause. There's no way Elena wouldn't pack at least the romantics. Yet I see volumes of poetry sitting where they have forever, untouched and left behind. My gut tightens, my gaze swinging back to Carmen's. She glares at me, putting her hands on her wide hips. Where is she? I ask, forcing my tone to remain level, even as my body itches to propel forward and shove her into the wall. She shrugs. Seemed rather eager to let me help her escape. Kind of odd for a newlywed, don't you think? I don't know, Carmen, I say, moving toward the balcony as the shadow dances behind its doors. Never stopped you from trying, did it? Her mouth falls shut as she moves with me, trying to block my exit. My skin prickles when she brings her hands to my chest, disgust swirling in my gut, making my vision blur. I won't let you corrupt my daughter, she says, tears welling up in her big brown eyes. At one point, her pain may have worked on me. Back when I was young and naive enough to think that Carmen Ricci was capable of caring for someone other than herself. I can even feel myself wavering as the tears spill over, slicking down her cheeks. The effects of her manipulation linger even now, regressive in nature despite the time that's passed. But then she speaks again, breaking the illusion. Don't use her to get back at me. Biting down on the inside of my cheek, I let out a low chuckle. Bending so my lips brush her ear, she shivers and it makes me nauseous. I'm not going to corrupt her. I'm going to ruin her, and every time she bleeds for me, I'm going to think about how she likes everything you didn't. Hey, he's talking to her mom, and I'm going to think about how she likes everything you didn't. Cool. So then he breaks her hand, Carmen's hand, and he goes out to the balcony, and he finds Elena, and Elena's like, yeah, you found me, and tilts her neck so he can, like, inject her with freaking sleeping, like, drugs, and knock her out. Then he, like, throws her over his shoulder and, like, walks her right out the house. Just another Tuesday, I guess. Just another Tuesday. So then Elena wakes up on an airplane, naked, completely nude. A little freaky outy, as one would expect, but nothing happened to her. But internally, it is very, very apparent that she's attracted to Callum. Like, she's a little bit afraid of him for obvious reasons, but we're bordering, again, hard on dubious consent through this entire thing, that she has always wanted him, and she didn't want to marry Matteo anyway, and it's just, like, the best worst case, I guess, right now for her. And I'm not mad about the premise. If anything, I think I would love the premise. Minus, again, the context of the ages in which they met. Take that piece away, I would be like 100% on board for the story so far. In the next part, I have highlighted, it says, his eyes darken, the mahogany eclipsed with lust, flickering over me as his hand brings the meat of a Granny Smith apple to his lips. When he bites down, juices sparking in various directions, I feel the crunch in my core. It echoes in my ears, my gaze falling as he pulls the apple away to chew, his mouth moist as it moves. A pulse vibrates between my legs, the dangerous expression on his face making me dizzy. Y'all gotta chill. Are you kidding me right now? So it's a lot of tension and flirting, and she thinks to herself, she says, what's wrong with me? Just a few hours ago, this man blackmailed me into marrying him, threatened the lives of everyone I love just so I would become a willing pawn in some weird game that I don't even understand yet. I'm not sure I buy his story about being blackmailed himself either. A man dubbed Dr. Death by everyone he comes into contact with is not a man who easily bends to the will of others, so his immediate default to accepting the terms of his tormentor set off red flags in my mind. But since I also have no other leads to go on, and no, he doesn't make idle threats, I'd have no choice. We cut to his perspective. Elena doesn't leave the bedroom until the second that we land. I sit in the cabin with my legs crossed, nursing the scotch Marceline handed me, waiting for her to enter, to give me peace of her mind, but the moment never comes. A dull twinge in my gut, thorns spiraling outward and clawing at the organ beating inside my chest, something adjacent to guilt, brushing the corner of the feeling without letting it fully set in. Again, hey, beautiful writing. I haven't felt bad about my actions in years, due in part to the fact that I engage in a lot of charity work at free clinics in order to absolve myself. Not that it helps my sleep any better at night, but at least it keeps my mother from rolling over in her grave. Yet now, considering the way I dragged Elena into my mess and the way that I'm leaving her half-satisfied, shame worms its way into my brain, cloaking me in its vile shadows. Downing the rest of my drink, I focus on the burn of the alcohol as it glides down my throat, dwarfing the sensation before it has time to grow. The half-satisfied that he talks about, by the way, is a part that I left out where he gets her off while they, like, bite each side of an apple, making full eye contact, biting an apple, and he gets her off. And y'all are some f***ing weirdos. Hey, no judgment, but also a little bit of judgment. So there's more banter and there's tension, and they get off the plane, and he confirms to her that he has no intention of hurting her. You know, she pushes, she's like, like you did stuff to me and you made me feel certain ways, but you won't like actually have intercourse with me. Like, what's that about? Are you not attracted to me? He's like, just not yet. And she's very offended by this, by the way. Like, throughout this book, she's very, very offended by his hesitancy here. So after the plane, they hop into a car and they're chauffeured to his estate. Yes, I said estate. Homie got a private jet and homie got an estate. This shit used to be a hotel that he turned into a house. I've been skipping over it, but he has made reference to Persephone a few times. He's talked about Elena having a pomegranate tattoo, like right under her rib, and her shampoo being pomegranate scented. And I suppose the freaky apple scene earlier could be an allusion to the pomegranate situation in the OG story. I say all of this to say that his property is called the Asphodel, which the Asphodel Fields, in case you are like not aware of Greek mythology, it's where most of the souls go for their like end of life, finding peacetime. It's kind of like the purgatory. You're just kind of vibing. Also, the asphodel is a type of flower like that they would usually leave on graves, and it is very intrinsically involved with Persephone and like associated with Persephone. They get to the house. Beautiful house. Again, used to be a hotel that he turned into a residence. It's grand, and he shows her their place. He's giving her a tour, and they end in their bedroom. And she was under the impression that she would have her own room. She's like, I don't know how arranged marriages or whatever you want to call this work, but I really thought I would have my own space. And he's like, I don't know why you keep insinuating that this marriage isn't legitimate. It's legitimate. Like, we're sharing the same room. Of course we're sharing the same room. And she's like, whoa, my bad. So there's more tension and him talking about ruining her again if it would make her believe that their marriage is real. And he just leaves her hanging yet again. He's like super, super teasy, and then he just leaves. And she debates if he truly wants her, and if she would be able to still run away. She's kind of like eyeing the windows and thinking to herself about what her mother told her about getting out as fast as humanly possible, and how much that her mom freaked out when she learned that they got married. And she's wanting to, I don't know, she's just thinking about running away. So in chapter 9, cut back to Cal's perspective, and he's talking to Jonas, his like business partner, associate dude, and he's reflecting on his life and his life with his mother. And I'll read it to you because it's pretty fundamental, okay? When my mother and I visited Aplana, that's where they flew to. So they flew out of Boston to some island off the East Coast. Couldn't tell you, bro. Not really specified. I don't know where any of these locations are. Is that me being a Midwesterner and not knowing what the the East Coast geographic looks like? Probably. When my mother and I visited Aplana, we stayed at the Asphodel Inn on the southern, more isolated border. The stretch of beach behind the hotel was rockier and lacked proper marina, so tourists tended to avoid it altogether. Each year, my mother pinched and saved every extra cent that she earned from a daycare job in Boston, and by walking from our crummy apartment in Hyde Park, foregoing dinner after ensuring that I had enough to eat, and making our own clothes on an electric sewing machine that she'd found in an alleyway when I was an infant. In all honesty, I'd probably have preferred a meal that didn't contain just beans once. Growing up over a weekend vacation in the dead of winter, the only time that she seemed to be able to get off work. But it was important to Deirdre Anderson that her only son experience some life outside of Boston. Outside the poverty my sperm donor had thrust us into that her eventual cancer would exacerbate. The first time I returned to the island years after my mother's death, Jonas Wolfe was something of a household name. Some of Aplana's few year-round residents. His parents moved from London when he was a child, and he grew up on the north end of the island where business flourished and everyone seemed to flock. Jonas, being like super handsome, a talent scout had come and had hired him to be a model. He then, on his 21st birthday, had been arrested and charged with attempting to assassinate the owner of the island, Tom Primrose. After a brief stint in jail, during which he confessed to having ties to some secret organization, the residents of Applina mostly shunned him. A restraining order was taken out by Tom himself that didn't allow him within spitting distance of the Primrose Mansion. I recognized a lot of myself in him when the news broke about his arrest, so I hired a lawyer, got his sentence reduced, and was there to greet him as soon as he was released. During his incarceration, I acquired ownership of the Flaming Chariot, his dive bar that clearly operated as a front for whatever gang or society he was loyal to, then offered a partnership in exchange for his services. He'd only failed at the attempt because of a leak, it turned out. Among the criminal underground of the East Coast, Jonas Wolf was evidently known for a quick, traceless hit, and I made sure to make myself indispensable to him. Even back then, I knew one day my time with the Ricci's would come to an end. I just hadn't realized how soon it would be. So all of that is to contextualize, right, who Jonas is as he shows up into his house. So Jonas shows up unannounced, and it unsettles Callum. He's not very happy about that necessarily, but not enough to not be distracted, to be bricked up. As he's looking at these security feeds of her, I settle in behind my desk, pulling up the house's security feed and finding the one set up in the master bedroom instantly. As I click into her camera, a wave of deja vu washes over me, reminding me of the last time I saw her like this from behind the same screen. On the camera, hidden in her room, I noticed her sporting a few new bruises. Ones I knew her fiancé had caused, and though at the time I vowed not to touch her again, I lost my fucking mind and showed up to demand she tell me what happened anyway. We fucked instead. Sometimes it feels we rarely have a real conversation without things getting heated. Not that either of us seems to mind. Ew. My ear jerks to life inside my slacks. Yo, bro, what the hell? Yeah, so anyway, after that reflection, long story short, Jonas showed up to give him an update on a couple of things. Ivers International is who they hired to do some research on the thumb drive that got left at Callum's house. They're trying to do research, and he had tasked them to do a deep dive and figure out who this freaking blackmail came from. And they requested an extension. After 3 days, they can't figure out what's going on. They're literally no closer to cracking the case. And as Jonas says this, and as he's requesting this extension, clasping my hands together, I exhale, irritation making my skin itch. Fine, but if I have to step fucking foot in King's Trace myself, there will not be an Ivers International when I leave. Make sure he gets the message. What's King's Trace? I don't know. Jonas raises an eyebrow, his purple eyes peaked with curiosity. Purple eyes? Isn't that your protege's family company? True. Kieran Ivers took over for me when I scaled back on my work for the Ricci's remote operations in Maine. The hermit took to fixing the way that I took to Elena, as easily as inhaling a single breath and releasing it back into the air. Though he's hardly my protege, I taught him everything I know because I knew that he could do it, and I needed him to step in. Not because I was looking to become a mentor, just another cog in my machine. Another update from Jonas is that Violet is still rejecting her payments. My jaw ticks, but I nod. To be expected. I didn't think that she'd really warm up to the idea until she met Elena anyway. Jonas scowls. Does the mafia princess have a particularly persuasive tongue? His question sends a wave of desire through me, and I smirk. Not one she'll be able to use on my sister, no. Ew. I thought that maybe if Violet saw me as part of a familial unit rather than as some random drifter trying to get to know her and pay her debts, she'd be more receptive to the idea. Right. He taps his thumb on the side of the notepad, pursing his lips. About the whole familial unit thing. Setting my drink down, I pin him with a look. If this is about me marrying her again, you need to let it go. What's done is done, and I'm not going to be reversing it. She needs my protection from whoever it is that's trying to blackmail the Ricci's, and I need a wife, he finishes. Setting his notepad down on the desk, I just stare, confusion jumbling my thoughts as he shrugs. I know what the terms of your trust are. Your lawyer talks a lot when he's drunk. I make a mental note in the back of my mind to find Miles Parker the next time that I'm in Boston and slit his throat. Especially since it's all a ruse. What the fuck does that mean? It's not that. Jonas pulls his phone from his jean pocket, unlocking the screen and holding it up for me to see. My name is entered in the search engine's box. A dozen news articles trending, some with live updates listed below my scarce bio from when I was a resident. Annoyance ratchets down my spine as I scan the headline, my hand already reaching for my own phone, dialing Raphael's number before I can suck in another breath. Disgraced doctor kidnaps American-Italian socialite. Original media mogul fiancé missing in the aftermath. When my call is declined, crimson splashes across my eyesight, the dial tone making my body vibrate with violence, and I slam the phone down so hard on my desk that the screen shatters. The only thing that Raphael is known for these days is being a snake and biting when backed into a corner. Just days ago, I uprooted his life, taking his most prized possession right from under him. And while my plan had been to navigate the next steps carefully and intelligently, this little play changes things. If Raphael wants a war, I'll bring the fucking battle to his feet. Walking over to the wardrobe in the back corner of my office, I yank the door open and pull out a fresh pair of black leather gloves. Sliding them over my hands, reveling in the familiar stretch of the material against my skin, I admire the sleek look, knowing that soon they'll be painted red. Cool. Yo, that shit is ominous as hell. We cut to Elena exploring the property. Cal has pretty much left her alone. He's kept his distance for a couple of days, and so she's trying to be entertained, figure out stuff to do. She explored the house. Now she's making rounds around the property for like the 5th time, and she comes across this shed in the backyard, and she's like, that's where he kills people. She's just, I don't know, moseying, and she's bored. She's lonely. Can you blame the girl? Cal, again, he's been running errands. He's been holed up in his office. He's just been avoiding her entirely. After exploring and doing this other stuff, she calls her sister, and they talk about the situation. Apparently, Carmen, their mother, immediately reported Callum to the news outlets. Turns it into this whole kidnapping thing. All the media is like eating it the frick up. And she's very, very freaky outy about this. They're offering a huge reward for information about her whereabouts, and she makes her way inside after confirming to her sister that she's okay, like things are fine. And she's in the kitchen, and she hears Callum come home, and he just ignores her. He just goes straight to his office, and she just feels like crap. And so she makes her way in there. You know, she seeks him out, and he's in his office, in his scrubs, leaning over his desk, covered in blood, drinking scotch. He's like, I don't want company. And she's like, your wife's hardly company. Like, I'm really bored. And then he starts to kind of feel bad for her. And so then we cut to the next chapter where, from Callum's perspective, we learn that he is bloody from unaliving a Ricci cousin that had been creeping around the island. Cal had decided to send his head to get the message across that he should stop the headlines about the kidnapping. And then it's a bunch of tension. They're like, right about when they're about to do stuff, somebody's just knocking at the door. And she's like, you're really gonna get that? And he's like, surely it's important, right? Like, somebody, they wouldn't just be knocking if it wasn't something important, right? Just keeps going in the background. So he's like, go upstairs, go get naked, and wait for me. So she does. He puts on some clothes that are not bloodied and goes to answer the door. When I peer out of the peephole, I don't see anyone. Palming my gun with one hand, I slowly ease the door open with the other, mentally scouting the porch for signs of an intruder. Instead, all I'm met with is an envelope taped above the mounted mailbox. Tearing it off the wall, I quickly slip back inside and rebolt the door, leaning against it as I tear the envelope open. My stomach drops to my ass as I finger the contents, returning to my office to resituate my pistol. And even though my gut already knows, I pull the flash drive out anyway and shove it into the USB port of my laptop, pushing play when the media window pops open. Timeout. I don't even have to be somebody who works for an IT company. This can just be a general IT hygiene advice. Don't plug a random USB stick into your day-to-day laptop though, okay? Can we just establish some rules real quick of like how horrible of like cybersecurity that is? Preaching aside, into the USB port of my laptop, pushing play when the media windows open up. I met with grainy footage of a private moment between Elena and I from minutes before the knocking began. I glanced around my office, apprehension licking a path up my sternum, making it hard to gather a normal breath as I searched for signs of a hidden camera. That is scary. So cut to Elena in bed, right? Waiting forever. She's starting to feel embarrassed, and she's like muttering to herself, but she's like still turned on. But she's muttering about how people said that Cal wasn't husband material, and how wrong that they are, that they would only think that if he hadn't been between their thighs. And as she's saying that, Callum shows up in the doorway, and she's like, uh-oh. Let me stop talking. And he's like, don't let me interrupt. What were you saying? I was talking to myself. You hear a lot of gossip about me? Not a lot. Just stuff my mom and her sister sometimes say. Ah, yes. Carmen and her big fucking mouth. The animosity in his tone catches me off guard. I know he and my parents have a relationship that predates his time as a Ricci Inc. employee, but it was always my understanding that he was like family to the two of them. The distant, mysterious, extended relative who only came to town when he absolutely had to and made a stink about it every time, but family nonetheless. And he's like, what do you know about me? What do you think you know about me? So she rattles off some facts. Where he went to school, he did his residency at Johns Hopkins, he, volunteers for stuff. He's a assassin. His birthday's October 31st, Halloween, because of fucking course it is. And, his love for poetry and memoirs, and as she's rattling these things off, he's continuing to touch her and tells her that somebody is watching them. As he's like touching her and questioning her, he says this. And also, just push all that to the side, I would like to note, I think I note it later, but throughout the book, there have been citations of poetry and poets and pieces of work. And for a, personally, poetry nerd, it has been wonderful. The entire book is so good about that piece of it. I love that. So then they go through this whole thing, and then he talks about somebody watching them, and he says, I have a feeling it might be your father, but I'm not entirely sure why. My hand starts to pull away at as his words penetrate my hazy brain, but he smacks the inside of my thigh, and I jolt from having the sensitive flesh there brutalized. Hey, I don't know if I said it yet, but when they had intercourse for the first time, when she lost her V card to him, and I say that quoting the book, that's not me personally, whatever, that's a whole other discussion. When she lost her V card to him, he took out a knife and he carved the letter K into her inner thigh. K for Callum, by the way. He smacks the inside of my thigh, and I jolt from having the sensitive flesh there brutalized. It's also been 8 weeks. I don't know if that should still be sensitive or not. I didn't tell you to stop. He starts to move his fingers quicker, shallow thrusts that have me craving. Okay, I don't want to read a freaking porno. Hold on. Oh my god. Wait, actually, I will, because this is crazy. I didn't tell you to stop. He starts to move his fingers quicker, shallow thrusts that have me canting my hips up, silently pleading for more. If he wants to watch, we're going to give him a show. The notion should give me pause or make me recoil in horror, but it doesn't. An invisible fire ignites in my core, spreading like a fever throughout my body, settling in my bones. I fear your parents, your mother in particular, think that they can rescue you from me. So in case they've planted that little seed in your mind, let me uproot it entirely once and for all. You're going nowhere, my little Persephone. I didn't bring you back to my island just so you could leave, and I'm certainly not relieving you of your sentence. You'll serve it at my goddamn side as the queen of my little underworld, and all your family will ever be able to do is watch. I gasp as he finishes his sentence, the image of my parents watching Cal... Fuck... Oh, sorry. Well, that censorship didn't work very well. The image of my parents watching Cal me, deliciously forbidden and intoxicating for some reason, an ultimate act of defiance, I suppose. Minus another star. Bro, my guy, are you kidding me right now? fucking hot. I can't breathe. So in the next chapter, he takes her to the Flaming Chariot that we discussed earlier. It's the bar that he bought for Jonas, that they co-own, like whatever. Elena has never been in a bar before. She doesn't even know what this place is. So that's what she says. She says, "What is this place?" I glance down at my wife, a twinge of nausea tickling my esophagus. Okay, Kaylee, it's fine. It's been 10 years. You've moved away from Arkansas. You know how to read now. I glanced down at my wife, a twinge of nausea tickling my esophagus. Maybe it's because I was scarcely around her as she grew up, spending my time with either of her parents while they kept the children hidden, but it's never occurred to me just how sheltered she was until now. A 20-year-old should know that what the inside of a bar is, even if she's never been in one. Most 20-year-olds in the city have been in one. Part of me should feel bad that I'm ruining the girl's life before she's even had a chance to experience it, but the other darker part of me recalls how mine was stripped away by her parents, and that erases the guilt. So he's just going to perpetuate abuse upon his wife and take advantage of her because she's the child of his abusers. And that, my friends, is why this is minus another star. You've got to be shitting me. Y'all motherfuckers reading this shit giving this 5 stars? Did y'all not read that paragraph? I will hope and pray that you just happened to skim over that paragraph. And if you read that paragraph and you still sat there and said, "Cal, hard eyes, oh my God, what a babe. He's so cool for the way that he admires Elena, and like he takes care of her, and like it's so spicy and forbidden." There's a big difference between like forbidden and like abusive. And I would love for once in my life to read a dark romance that doesn't inherently abuse the main female character. Be it SA or grooming or this type of shit that is like a grooming SA hybrid. I would love so much for all of us to maybe unpack why you were so willing to read a paragraph like that and overlook it. So they show up to the bar. They go and take a seat. There's nobody acting as bouncer. They're very, very short-staffed. Because the bartender, the brand new bartender that they hired, called out. Said brand new bartender is actually Callum's younger sister, half-sister, Violet. We'll get there. So she called out. So this waitress is like kind of like running between everybody and taking care of things. And Elena takes it as the waitress hitting on Callum. And so she, when she orders her food, she does one of these. She was like, yeah, I'll take, me with Callum. I'll take an Alfredo. I'll take a chicken Alfredo. This waitress is like, okay, you weird bitch. So she does. And then Callum leaves. After finding out his sister isn't actually working, he leaves. In truth, he only took Elena there to kind of show off Elena to Violet. So when Violet wasn't there, he left to go and find her and like try and figure stuff out. But Elena has no idea because God forbid these people fucking communicate. She's there alone. She's a little pissy. She's a little frustrated. It turns out that he had lured Violet to that island. Violet's also from Boston. He lured Violet to Alpena with a job offer to be a bartender. And he did it not revealing who he was. The whole point, kind of alluded to before by Jonas, is that he's trying to send her money and help her because she's kind of poor. She's in debt. She's got some stuff going on. And so he just wants to help. He's like, please, for the love of fucking God, let me give you money. So he creates this job offer that you can't resist in hopes to lure her there and then blindside her in hopes of having a relationship again and forcing her to take more money from him so that they can have a relationship, and she'll want to be siblings, right? That's also why he was going to bring Elena there, so that she could believe that he's a changed man and all this other stuff. That plan is obviously not panning out if she's calling out of work. So as he's leaving, he tells the bartender to keep an eye on Elena. Don't let her leave. I got some shit to do. Deal with it. I'll be back. He steps outside. steps into the sunlight. As his like eyes are dilating, Violet is standing there, and she says, "I knew it." Dun, dun, dun. We cut back to Elena, super upset that she's been abandoned. Hey, understandable, just want to say that. So she's upset that she's been abandoned without explanation, without money, without knowing where he went, like where she is, when he's coming back, how to get home, like literally anything. Like she is so legitimately stranded in this bar that she goes to leave. And the bartender, tasked with watching her, does arguably the stupidest shit that you could possibly ever do in general, but also especially when your bosses are literal assassins. She goes to leave, and I will read this aloud so that you guys can understand the stupidity here. My hand grazes the push bar at the same time that someone's fingers curl around my elbow, yanking me backward. My arm flails blindly, jabbing in the direction of my assailant. The back of my hand connects with his cheek, a satisfying crack echoing through the air as I smack him. "Jesus," the man says, wrenching my hands behind me, pulling me so I'm flush with his chest. His breath is hot in my ear, and I squirm violently as I try to get away, wondering why the other people in the bar aren't helping me. "Stop moving, bitch," he grunts, shaking me a little. "Let go of me and I will," I spit. Strands of hair sticking to my face, sweat beads along my hairline, fear wedging its way into my heart, even though I've been in this situation before. With Mateo, I always knew how it would end. With bruises and chipped teeth. By the time he was 17, Mateo had had 2 oral surgeries and at least 4 veneers put in because of my fighting back. But this is a stranger in a foreign place, and I don't necessarily know any of his potential weaknesses. In this position I'm in, my arms pinned to my back, my normal defense mechanisms are skewed at best. Still, I manage to slip one arm free, balling a hand into a fist and swinging it over my shoulder. I hear it connect with bone. I feel the split beneath the force, and my assailant drops me, clutching his nose and hissing a string of profanities. "Fuck, this bitch just broke my nose," he moans, cupping his palms over his face. His chin-length, dark blonde hair falls over his eyes as he stoops over, trying to catch his breath. The few other customers milling about have either managed to somehow miss the scuffle or are trained to ignore the commotion, because no one even bats an eye as I distance myself from my attacker. After I have a second to collect myself, I recognize him as the man behind the bar when we first walked in, the gold chain around his neck giving him mobster vibes. His boat shoes, however, do not. Finally straightening, Vinny drops his hand, stretching his lips in a circular motion. He makes eye contact with me just as I turn to leave again, a strangled sound ripping from the back of his throat. "Seriously, woman, you can't leave. Cal will skin me alive if I don't keep an eye on you like I promised." I raise an eyebrow, nodding my chin at the bruise spreading from the bridge of his nose. "If you try to touch me again, I'll wear your skin. Callum isn't the boss of me, and nor do I need a babysitter." Lots of tension in the bad way, not like actual fun tension. So homeboy, again, tries to attack her. She, kicks him, I think breaks some fingers or something. He then pulls the thing out of his pocket and stabs her in the calf with a GHB. I don't know what's legal on YouTube to say. A little bit of sleepy time stuff into her calf. She continues outside, reveling in the feelings of being abandoned and, her mixed feelings about Cal and him. Again, not telling her where she is or how long he'll be gone or leaving her anything that she needs or literally anything. Just abandoning this girl. She is done. And so she starts running. So we cut back to Cal and his conversation with Violet, and she begins to speak, and he feels like a kid again. The kid at the doorstep of his deadbeat father after his mother died of cancer when he was a child. So his mother, when she died, she left a goodbye note with instructions on how to find his father. In addition, she handwrites the poem Funeral Blues by W.H. Auden, one of my all-time favorites. Stop all the clocks. Cut off the telephone. Prevent the dogs from barking with a juicy bone. Silence the pianos with the muffled drum. Bring out the coffin. Let the mourners come. Let airplanes circle, moaning overhead, scribbling on the sky the message, he is dead. Put crape bows round the white necks of the public doves. Let the traffic policemen wear black cotton gloves. He was my north, my south, my east and west, my working week and my Sunday rest. My noon, my midnight, my talk, my song. I thought that love would last forever. I was wrong. The stars are not wanted now. Put out every one. Pack up the moon and dismantle the sun. Pour away the ocean and sweep up the wood, for nothing now can ever come to any good. It's so beautiful. I had to share that. Again, hey, if you're into gore, if you're into mafia, if you're into poetry, this is a great book for you. We learn that his mother got pregnant after a one-night stand. The man was married and he had just had his first son with his wife. And he told Cal's mom to take care of it. He didn't want to have anything to do with the kid. He didn't want to have anything to do with her. And so she chose instead to raise Cal as a single mother and not tell him anything about his... When she died of cancer, he was now alone. At 12 years old, he had nowhere else to go. He had nothing to his name. He had absolutely nothing. And so when she wrote in her letter the address for his father, he sought him out. And so Cal knocked on his father's door like 4 times that week and was always ignored until Violet answered. And he decides to run away, that he doesn't want to poison her. He doesn't want to ruin the innocence of this little girl. Cut to today. Now, with that same little girl staring up at me again as an adult, I can't help the pang that comes next as I return to the present. I ran when I saw her back then, and everything in me wants to repeat that scene, to get as far away as I can from my sister before my existence ruins her. One of my legs shift as I try to escape, but Violet notices and scurries in front of me, blocking my path. Oh no, you're not going anywhere. You lure me to this shitty little island with a job that I just knew was too good to be true. The least that you can do is explain yourself. I clear my throat, glancing down at her all-black outfit, so ridiculously similar to my own that I almost laugh. Nature versus nurture, I guess. Steeling myself against the nerves fluttering inside of my chest, I stuff my hands in my pockets and I shrug. I'd say you already know the reasons you're here, Violet. You won't cash any of the checks that I send, and you've blocked my ability to wire transfer funds into your bank account. This was the next logical step. Actually, the next logical step would be to leave me alone, like I've asked you to 100 times. Take the money that I'm trying to give you and I'll leave you be. She goes on to say, I don't want money. I don't want anything to do with you. Like, I was just starting to forget about you. Just leave me alone. Her words are a barb aimed directly at my heart. It sinks inside the muscle, flaring so it latches tightly and refuses to relinquish its hold. I rub the ache as they cause, taking a step back, wondering if I should go back inside and leave her be after all. It's so sad. They have a little bit more back and forth, and she like pushes back a little bit more, and he's like, yeah, got it, dude. Get lost. Get off my island, and I'll leave you alone. And it's just sad. And then he goes back into the bar, which I'm like, hey, not to break the tension of the moment that we're building here, but like, you were that close to the door? You were that close to the... So Elena gets upset and leaves. You're talking to your sister. You don't see Elena go past you. You guys went through both the front door. There's no like indication that they went through different doors. So like, we're about to go through a very, very dramatic like rabbit hole of what happens next. How did you guys not see each other? Like, how did this happen? If you are new to my channel, I can never actually sit down long enough to do any of these rants in one sitting. So this is sitting number 2. And it's already 7:30 at night. So this is probably going to have to be done in 3 sittings. So you get to see all kinds of different depths and angles and whatnot of my kitchen. So we cut back to Elena, who, again, is running after being injected with something in the calf. She ends up at an abandoned bus station a couple of blocks away. We learn later that this bus station had been abandoned by the town, basically. They stopped funding it because of like tourism and cutting back and stuff. And so this bus stop is actually like a hotbed for criminal activity. But again, she would have no idea about that because what is communication? She's getting a bunch of phone calls and she's kind of ignoring them, but she's starting to feel the drugs take effect. And so she kind of walks through the bus station. She finds one of the seats and she sits down and she finally answers Cal's call. She puts it on speakerphone, with her pinky because she's just getting like so slowly tired. And, you know, she's talking about how she's lonely and how he left her, and she's starting to hear these angry voices in the distance and slamming doors, but there's nothing that she can really do about it. And the voices are getting closer and closer as she tells Cal that she's at the bus station. He's instantly pissed about this. And as she's passing out, she hears the voices of the men directly over her, taunting her. Okay. Cut to Cal, who has the bartender dude bound in the office of the bar. Like, he has him in the back area, torturing him for putting his hands on Elena, and there's lots of detailed violence. When he was on the phone with Elena, he had pulled Jonas into the phone call because Jonas was out running errands, so he was a little bit closer to, like, being able to locate her and go to the bus station. He leaves one of his other coworkers, like some bodyguard dude, he's not really relevant to the plot, leaves him in charge of said shitty bartender guy, though, and he heads over to meet Elena and Jonas. I should stay for an interrogation, though the idea of not being there to retrieve Elena makes my stomach churn. I have no doubt that Raphael had something to do with Vincent's attack, but I'll find out more later. Vincent is the bartender. So he off the bat is suspicious that this bartender had something to do with her dad? But what? Okay. So finally he goes and finds her in, again, this shady ass bus station. A flash of dark hair catches my eye toward the front of the lobby, and I do a double take, not recognizing the form at first glance. Elena lies across a plastic bench, the hem of her dress pushed up her thighs, hair matted with sweat, and how do you say that non-censored? What's the censored version of that? Stuff from a man all in her hair, which is disgusting. They also recarved the K in her thigh. The K, again, if I have not already said it, I'll repeat it because this shit is so crazy. The K that he carved into her thigh the first time that they had intercourse. So that's freshly carved for some reason. He gets super, super angry about it. As they're going to leave, right, he like picks her up and he's hoping that she's not actually assaulted. Is the stuff in the hair not, I know it's not technically like SA, but it's kind of SA. But he's hoping that they didn't, like do anything physical. Like hopefully it's just the thing like on top of her and nothing else. So he like cradles her and goes to take her home. And as he's leaving, he notices in the bus station like ticket booth area, there's a business card for Raphael, for the Ricci family. And he knows that this was like not a hit, but this was purposefully done. The note card taunts me, evidence that Raphael and Carmen are still trying to push the narrative that I stole their daughter rather than negotiating her hand fair and square. I'm sure this was another ploy to play up my evil existence, whoever assaulted Elena probably taking the evidence with them in order to make me look worse. Or they wanted to scare her away from me. Maybe both. But how did they know that she would be here? We're clearly being watched, and I wonder about the flash drive with the footage of inside of my house on it. If that was part of this, how far will the Ricci's go to send a message? In the next chapter, we go back to Elena's perspective. She wakes up in their bedroom, and Cal is sitting next to her, and he's being very cold and direct. Like, not very good bedside manner whatsoever, but he's very disheveled, right? Even though he's being cold, she can tell he's like bags under his eyes, his like hair is all messed up. Like you can tell he's been fretting over this situation and concerned about her. She says, "What did they do to me?" His jaw ticks, a muscle thumping against his skin. "I don't know. I've been waiting for you to wake up so we could find out." Tears burn my eyes again, and I drop my hair, ready to brush them from my cheeks when they spill over. But they never do. I can feel them welling, scorching my eyes with their presence, but none fall. Shame rolls through me like an angry tidal wave, making me tremble violently, and I curl my hands into fists, trying to stave off the fear and confusion. And I highlighted that because, like, I've been waiting for you to wake up so we could find out. I don't know, I feel like the bar's in hell, but the idea that he didn't just, like, examine her while she was passed out, made me happy. Am I okay? Luckily, not SA'd. And then she asks, "Did you kill him?" Speaking of the bartender, I ask, leaning into his touch, even though it hurts with him, pain is a given. No, he says softly, turning my head slowly, his eyes roving over every inch of me, assessing for damage. I frown, opening my mouth to protest, and he shakes his head, turning me forward, so I'm forced to meet his gaze. Don't you want to watch? Hey, I'm not mad at it. Y'all know my stance. If you've watched any of my videos. If you have not, a reoccurring theme in my videos is I love when abusers get abused. If you put your hands on someone, you don't deserve to live. Like, I love that. This is hot to me. If there is anything that this man did in this entire book, that sentence alone, bro. I'll unpack that later with my therapist. So they do. She wants to be involved. So he takes her to the shed out back, and she says, I knew it. I knew this was his killing shed. You know, I say as we walk inside now, trying to speak over the nerves pounding between my ears. This place is not at all discreet. I pegged it my first day here. Cal glances down at me, switching on the light that illuminates a short hallway. I'm not trying to keep it a secret. You're not? From the people on the island? Hardly. Because you own half of it? We reach the end of the hall, pausing outside of the closed door. I don't own half the island, he says, brushing a piece of lint from my robe. I'm an investor in a lot of their most profitable businesses, inherited several commercial properties from my grandfather. On top of that, I've logged an unholy number of volunteer hours at the only clinic around and am a very consistent donor to their research programs and other things that they need funding for. So you own the people. You'd be surprised what people are willing to overlook when their needs are met, and then some. Then they go into very gory detail about unaliving this man. So gory, in fact, that like a circular saw is involved. Y'all can go read that if you're into it. I just skimmed these types of scenes, and I skimmed these the same way I skimmed the spice. Both were in great quantity in this book. But again, I'm not here for that. I'm here for the plot, bro. Genuinely. Since when did dark romance just become like PORN, like trauma PORN? Can I just have like a good quality story with some dark elements? I'm not asking for like, again, the main character to be assaulted or so much spice. I don't know when dark romance became synonymous with spice. If I want spice, I will look up erotica, right? I'll go to whatever I would want to go to if I wanted that. I just want to read a good fucking book with some dark elements. Anyway, that's a personal, not vendetta, slight. It's a personal complaint that I have. I just would like to read more good quality books that are, give me a good quality mafia book, please. If you know of one, please, for the love of God, that is not just spice every other page. Harm aside, she's watching all of this. And I keep waiting for the shock to settle in, for numbness to flood my body as my brain tries to block out the trauma, but it never happens. A small fire burns in my chest as Cal opens Vincent's, and I clench my thighs together in an attempt at relief. Maybe it's because I grew up a mafia princess. I'm definitely no stranger to death. Or maybe it's that the violence comes as a tribute to me, being wielded on my behalf in a way no one has ever done for me before. When Cal finishes several minutes later, brushing his forearm over his face, smearing blood over his cheek, I'm met by an intoxicating, complicated wave of arousal. I don't like that. I don't like that at all, actually. No, I don't think I like that. It's cool. I don't think I like that. So immediately after they are done unaliving this man, they go and take a shower together. And this is like a cleaning your wounds scene where he's like showering her off and like washing her hair and giving her a little massage. And then she pulls him into the shower with her. And then there's spice. They finally hook up for the first time now that they're like actually married. And they make out in the shower. And this is like a very big deal because other than kissing her when they first got married, they really haven't kissed since. And he says, I've kissed less than a handful of women in my life. I've fucked far more than that, trying to erase the feel of abuse from where it was imparted onto me at a young age. Even when my thoughts and feelings were still confused and complicated, my body knew what it had been through. Kissing itself was not something I had ever been very fond of. It's too intimate, vulnerable, When your lips are locked with someone else's, there are too many variables left open for attack, and I've spent my life on high alert, always anticipating assault. And then they just go to the spice scene. My body knew what it had been through. Bro, I got the body keeps the score right there. That is like, that's some shit. And then you're just going to go into a spice scene saying one of the possibly the grossest things ever. I don't remember what this is, so let's see. Before the night we shared together, it had been years since I'd been with anyone else. After a bit of a chaotic phase, I threw myself into work and tried to establish a relationship with my sister, denying myself the basic carnal pleasures in life. Until last Christmas, I hadn't known that anything was missing. I didn't realize that I was practically living without one of my limbs, trying to navigate life as though nothing was wrong. But it wasn't sex itself that I was drowning without. It was sex with her. That wasn't gross. Oh, so that was the cute part. And then it ends with, I don't want to read this on the internet. Why do you people do this to me? You people being authors, not y'all. Love you guys. I'll have pumped you so full, it'll be seeping out of your pores. You're going to sweat me, and no one is ever going to touch you again. That makes me want to legitimately vomit, actually. You're going to sweat me? Oh my god, I can feel the gag in the back of my throat, like... The next chapter is literally just more spice. I don't think you understand how drawn out this scene is, guys. It's 2 whole chapters. Afterwards, they acknowledge that she's not on birth control and probably should be because bringing a kid into this situation would be crazy, and that kind of hurts her. She wants kids, I guess, at 20 years old with a man that she got kidnapped by. Stockholm Syndrome hitting quick, honey. They go into domestic bliss. They're brushing their teeth together. They're laying in bed, and she struggles to she struggles to sleep because she is so afraid that this newfound peace will fade and she will be stuck in a loveless marriage as she always feared. God damn! She falls asleep with him holding her and reciting poems, though, which is so cute. The fear of a loveless marriage is so sad, especially, right, because, like, she knew she was going to marry Mateo forever. Like, she knew she was going to end up in this abusive relationship, and so she has this, like, window out in the fear that that window would also close on her. Oh, I can't imagine, dude. In the next chapter, it's in the morning, and Cal is in his office talking to Jonas, and Jonas is giving him a hard time about looking oddly well-rested. Like consummating the marriage. And he's asking about Elena. And then they have this whole conversation. He pulls a packet from the bottom of his stack of papers, and it's a contract that I signed years ago, just before my grandfather's passing, giving me access to a multi-million-dollar trust fund in the that the old bastard had set up in my name. He'd already signed over ownership rights to 6 businesses on Aplana, as well as stocks and shareholdings in a variety of different companies, but I suppose he never quit trying to atone for the only finding out about me when it was too late to save my soul. One stipulation for the trust was that I had to be at least 25 before the funds became available to me, and I had to be clean, which meant extracting myself from the life of crime that I had fallen into, a much more difficult feat than outsiders seem to realize. Once you're part of the mafia, that's it. They don't let their people go without a fight, and frankly, when I let Raphael know months ago about me wanting to step down, I'd expected more resistance than I got. Another condition was that I had to be married, and it had to be legitimate. Of course, having amassed my own wealth over the years, I had no interest in bowing to the terms just for my parental grandfather's guilt money. But then I had tried reconnecting with my sister. She and our 2 brothers had been strategically left out of the will, the inheritance, and the trust fund. In fact, they were never even supposed to see a penny from it, which is why I'd been writing Violet's checks for my own savings, intending to transfer the trust money into an offshore account and leave the personal bank information with her. So the intent to prove that his marriage to Elena is legitimate is the birth control. Because I guess if you are on birth control and then you come off of birth control, that'll appear that they're trying for kids, which means the marriage has to be legitimate. They continue to talk about new hires for the bar after, like, literally 3 of their people are gone now. He obviously killed the bartender. Violet quit, and then Gwen, who I didn't say, but she was the one that like Elena was like showing her wedding ring off to, and had watched the whole thing happen and didn't do anything. They fired her. So they're having to hire a whole bunch of new people, and they're going through that. And Carmen, Elena's mother, calls. And so he picks it up, but it's not Carmen on the other side of the phone. It's actually her father who speaks. Anderson. Raphael's voice is clipped, unlike I've heard from him before. Thought I would have to chase you down in order to speak with you, but it appears you're just as eager to chat with my wife as you've always been. Believe me, I'm never eager to do anything regarding that she-devil. In any case, I didn't call to talk about Carmen. How's my daughter? A laugh tickles the back of my throat, but I swallow over it, aware that I need to navigate whatever he's about to say carefully. You mean after you deliberately had her attacked? She's as well as can be expected. I have no idea what you're talking about, Raphael replies, and I can imagine him fingering the edge of his massive thumb ring, staring down at the same insignia that was etched into the card left at the bus station. It's just been a while since she's answered her mother's texts, and we're starting to get worried. Maybe don't spread lies about her, the way that her and my marriage started, and she'd be more inclined to speak with you. And then he gets all like sentimental and cryy and clearly trying to frame or like get Cal to admit doing something to Mateo or kidnapping his daughter. And what are you doing? I ask slowly, glaring at the framed picture I own. It's one of a 16-year-old me sandwiched between Raphael and Carmen during their anniversary party. Carmen's arm is wrapped tight around my waist, keeping me close to her side where I'd stay for years like an idiot. I don't know why I still have the photo. In it, Raphael stares on, oblivious, the way she needed him to be. And then one day, he wasn't. Things were never quite the same, which I suspect is why he's being so cagey now. This all has the makings of a setup, and the idea that he's trying to lure me into some kind of trap has my blood boiling. So, a little bit of back and forth of him calling Raphael on his shit. Raphael clears his throat, and when he speaks again, the sadness is completely absent. I want money. You fucked me over in the deal, and I had to square off a nice portion of the Ricci business just to get out of it. I wasn't the one who told you to sell your daughter, or who asked her to come to my bed. Just like you never asked Carmen, right? I never went to Carmen, I want to say. It was always her coming to me. So in case you don't get the implication, especially with the 16-year-old photo, Elena's mother, Carmen, had groomed Cal since he was a child. And he had been having a sexual relationship with her and like emotional relationship to some degree with her for years. We'll unpack it more later, but the feeling in the back of my throat wanting to vomit, it's happening again. So then he, after this conversation, he shoots the photo, I think, at some point. I don't know where it is. Yeah, he just takes his gun. Hey, we shoot the Rolex, we shoot the photo. So he shoots the picture of him and Carmen and Raphael. And then he goes outside to go and visit Elena, and they have a little bit of back and forth. And she says something about being kidnapped, kind of in joking, like a joking comment to Marceline, but that triggers him after this other conversation. So leaving the two of them outside, I return to the library and hunker down, trying to rid myself of the strange feeling curdling in my stomach. It's not quite painful, almost a nauseating wave that crashes against the shore over and over without fully receding. Unscrewing a bottle of 55-year-old Jack, I pour 3 fingers into a tumbler, pick up the first book my hand lands on, and flop down in one of the 2 leather armchairs in front of the dormant fireplace. Opening the book, I balance it on my knee, my eyes glued to the page without actually reading. My heart beats rapidly, repulsed by the way that my stomach burns with awareness, trying to ignore the fact that the Riccis once again played me. Because that's what all of this boils down to. If not for the friendly guidance and promise of luxury Raphael gave me when we met, my entire life would likely be different. I might have had a shot at a relationship with my sister. Might be married for love, and not because I needed a queen on my side of the board. Might still have the medical career my mother wanted for me without ever feeling like I needed to give it up to make it up for all the lives I've ended. Minutes later, the library door creaks open, Elena slipping inside. She shuts us in together, tiptoeing over, and stands directly in front of me. And then can you guess what happens? More spice. It doesn't stop after this, by the way. It's like every chapter, like every single time that they interact. There are fingers going in places they belong. Don't belong. I don't know. You know what I'm saying. A month later, Elena's garden is still not growing. I don't know if I said that before. When he went out there to go and talk to her after shooting the family photo, she's trying to get a garden. She's trying to like make a place of her own on the island. Like, she loves plants. That was always her thing. But she can't get this freaking garden to grow. So a month later, there's still no growth, and she's on the phone with her sister. Her mom is still upset over the kidnapping and wanting to save her. Their dad's been acting weird, walking around like a dead man, and usually it's the usual sisterly chit-chat until one of the sisters says that she has a ballet recital coming up. And Elena says that she will be there. She goes to Cal's bar after this phone call to go and, I guess, visit him. I'm not really sure what her intention was. I don't know. But when she gets out of the car, she can't seem to move. Like, it kind of hits her in that moment, right? When she's about to go inside of, like, what happened to her the last time that she went in there. And she's a little, frozen. Fight, fawn, freeze. Fight, freeze, fawn. Fly, fight, fly. Oh, Jesus Christ. You know what I'm trying to say. She's frozen in fear. It's only 8 o'clock, bro. So, right when she's about to go inside, though, and she's just standing there, this girl with these long black pigtails laughs at her. Casting me a sidelong look, she drops her hands. I've come by this place 16 times in the last couple of weeks, but I can never bring myself to actually go in. Relief washes over me, and I let out a quick breath, scanning her more thoroughly. She's dressed in all black, her jeans rolled to the ankle, a resin sunflower pendant draped around her neck, providing the only source of color. Are you afraid of what's inside? She purses her lips. Something like that. We could go in together. I know the owner. I don't think he'd let anything happen while he's inside. You know Cal? I hold my left hand up, wiggling the diamond so that it glitters in the sunlight. Dude, this bitch. She's so jealous. She's 20. I should expect this, but it's so funny. Puffing her cheeks, she lets out a low whistle, rocking back on her heels. Oh, so you know him. You must be Elena. Pushing her hand between us, she gives a half smile, waiting. I blink at her palm, taking it tentatively, pumping it twice like Papa taught me. When I don't say anything further, she lets go and presses her lips together. I'm Violet, by the way. Ah, I say, roving my eyes over her features again, trying to figure out if I've met her somehow and forgotten. In truth, I haven't done much exploring of Aplana, except for visiting the farmer's market a couple of times with Cal and picking up muffins from a bakery on the north end with Marceline. You have no idea who I am, do you? I'm sorry, I'm new to the island, and honestly, it's fine. I don't tell anyone about him. Why would he tell anyone about me? How do you know him? How do you know Cal? I don't. That's so sad. So Elena, taking this to mean that means that Violet and Cal have had sex, and that he's just a little man whore, she busts inside the bar, busts into their office, starts popping off about, like, I'm just the archetype virgin, and I know that I've trusted you and done all this stuff, but, like, you're all fucking around, and, like, I need to know because of my health, and like, losing her shit. He's like, hold on, let's let Jonas out of the room. So that's when she meets Jonas formally, after she loses her mind in this office. He leaves, and then Cal forces her to sit on his lap to have the conversation. He reveals that he's not sleeping with anyone else, but her jealousy is super hot. And then I said, that's it, man. Like, from here out, 20 to 80% of each chapter is spice, which is super cool if that's what you're looking for, but I so genuinely am here for plot that it's irritating. I just want dark romance with a good plot. Please, spice is fine, but this is excessive, to me personally. I read my own mind. I say it like I didn't literally make these notes yesterday. So, that's that whole chapter. It's just them bantering back and forth flirtatiously about, like, well, I'm not sleeping with anyone. Would it make you jealous if I was? Well, I'm not sleeping with anyone either. Would it make you jealous if I was? And then they just do stuff in the office. In the following chapter, again, more spice. The one thing is that, like, while they're having that conversation, and she's like, I don't know anything about you. Like, I don't know anything. And so he's like, well, what do you want to know? Kind of knowing that she's going to say she wants to know everything, but obviously that's not an option. So then instead of telling her this, we get to learn everything because, again, we don't communicate. I love that. So in chapter 25, from Cal's perspective, we learn that Cal met Raphael when he was 13 years old at the hospital. He was waiting for his mother to get her cancer treatment done, and he ran into Raphael, who was like smoking under a no smoking sign, and he was waiting to find out about his grandmother's cancer treatment, and he was so impressed. He just like exuded this power and this like authority that he thought was so cool. A few moments later, he was joined by a leggy brunette wrapped in a deep purple fur coat, cradling a baby to her chest. Elena. They made their way to a blacked-out Cadillac waiting in the emergency lane, but not before he clipped me on the shoulder, dropping a card to the ground bearing Ricci Inc. insignia. But it was the woman who I couldn't stop staring at, and when her dark, captivating gaze met mine just before she climbed inside her vehicle, I was a goner. Too young and too stupid to realize that her attention was a bad thing. I just liked that she looked at me. After my mother died and my biological father rejected me again, I sought out the Riccis, unaware of how their presence would alter the course of my fate forever. It started innocent, with just me running tickets for one of the illegal gambling operations Raphael ran from the back of the deli in Roxbury, but he started training me to fight, to defend, and I knew things were turning. And when I carried out my first hit, I did so in the dead of night in a dirty alleyway while the men who'd been accused of ratting on Raphael's father pissed himself. When I put the bullet between his teeth, blood spraying across his wife's white blouse, brain matter splattering against my face, all I could see was the horrified look in his eyes, the pure terror, frozen forever in time as he looked up at me, pleading for mercy. In the years since, it's that look I've never forgotten, although not because I was disturbed, because I felt nothing. So in the current day, he is torturing one of Elena's attackers from the bus station. He found them. He was sent out. Turns out the guy was sent by Raphael, like we assumed, to send a message to Cal that he's willing to threaten his own daughter to get money out of Cal because of how in debt that he is now. It's also confirmed that Carmen, Elena's mom, is the one who went to the media outlets about the kidnapping, and it's also revealed that even if Cal gives Raphael the money, he plans on unaliving him, which is not a surprise to anybody. But he goes ahead and ends the man's life anyway, and sends his heart in a vacuum-sealed bag to Raphael's doorstep. Days, weeks later, I don't know, time's an illusion, he goes outside to talk to Elena, who is still upset over her garden not growing at all, and to comfort her, he unlocks the beach access gate, and they go out into the ocean. There's flowers everywhere on the beach, and she's so happy, running into the ocean to skinny dip and asking him to join her. He's not upset by this, but he's very uncomfortable, because she would be the only person to ever see him naked. Ever. He does, though. He tells her to turn around. So she does. She turns around and closes her eyes and stuff in the water. He comes up behind her and he grabs her. I whoop with surprise as his arms glide around my waist and my eyes fly open, hands searching for something to steady the top half of my body with. My fingers clutch at his shoulders, reveling in the thick muscle beneath his skin, and then I pause, feeling pockets of uniquely rough yet soft flesh. The same spots graze my stomach as I press into him, and my heart sinks low in my chest, thumping hard between us. Meeting his gaze as my fingers continue their exploration, I do my best to not look down, sure that whatever I find there will humanize him, that I won't be able to resist the brokenness, and my attraction will let loose and morph into something real, something that can hurt me. Sadness burns the back of my throat as I recognize the puckered skin, counting 8 spots on his right shoulder, then 5 on the left. I slide my palm in, cupping the base of his neck, absorbing the force of his swallow. This is good writing. She's like a good writer. Why are we writing crazy, smutty shit? Please, for the love of God, dude. You can write well. You don't have to be a sellout like this. And maybe you're not maybe Sav genuinely enjoys writing stuff like this. More power to you. But she's so talented. This is so fucking a shame. This is a goddamn shame. Sorry. It's a goddamn shame. So then this next part caught me off guard. I did one of those when I was reading. His eyes betray nothing. No vulnerability, no awareness, no shame. They stare at me blankly, a practiced ambivalence reflecting back, even though I can tell by the way that the tendons in his throat tense up that he doesn't like any of this. I'm no god, he says finally, releasing a stilted breath. Just an unlucky soul who somehow has managed to cheat death over 100 times. I'm no god. Bro, that type of comment will like hit every time. I don't even care. I don't know why. That kind of sentence, sometimes it can be overdone in a lot of these books and it can just be like cringy, but that was hot. And then it's more spice. They're like banging in the middle of the ocean, man. I don't know. What do you want from me? Next, she goes to the bar again, trying to find Violet specifically, but there's just this like super side story about the new bartender and Jonas, and I don't think it's relevant. Even reflecting now, I don't think that the conversation was relevant. I think the only thing is kind of upset at the way that Jonas phrases it, as if Cal was not blackmailed into the relationship. And so she says that. She says, he was blackmailed into it. We both were. Right. I forgot about that. He shoves his hands into his jacket pockets, pressing his lips together. Still, Elena, think about it. Is a man like that ever blackmailed easily? I'm not saying that he wasn't forced into doing it. Maybe it's not the full picture. Maybe you should see if anyone else has the other side of the photograph. What the f*** does that mean? We don't find out until the literal last paragraph of this f***ing book. I hate that so much. In the next chapter, Cal received another blackmail video, and this time it's of he and Elena's moment in the ocean, and he just doesn't understand why or what they want. He ends up pulling out a photo of his mother that he has hidden on the underside of his office desk, and he's looking at it, and he's reminiscing, and Elena comes in, and she asks about it, and he opens up about his mother's battle with cancer. 32. My mother was 32, and she died. The realization that soon I'll have been on this planet longer than her cuts deep. Prodding at a scabbed wound I'd once believed was healed, yet the way that it throbs and chips away, drawing new, fresh blood, suggests otherwise. She's the reason that I got into poetry as a kid. She was always reading Shakespeare and would quote Chaucer like scripture. She would have loved you. I push some of her hair over her I push some hair from her pale shoulder, leaving my next thought unspoken, hidden in the depths of my soul where it belongs. Would she have loved me? Wow, what a thing to... Wow. Oh, this poor baby. This makes me feel so bad for him. He lost his mom so young, got abandoned, got groomed and taken advantage of. Just trying to find the approval of a mother figure. Just trying to find some peace and comfort in a mother figure. She would have loved you, buddy. She would love you so much. This is just so sad. I just want to give him a little hug. So anyway, they talk about his mother, and they also end up kind of drifting to siblings, and he reveals that Violet is his sister. They like find a photograph or something, and she's like, oh, like I recognize her. Like that's who was at the bar. And so they finally get their miscommunication thing figured out. And she says, you know, like, I'm sorry about your siblings, like, that really sucks. I'm really thankful that I have a good relationship with my sisters. You know, speaking of that, I want to go to Boston to go to Ariana's ballet recital. Against his own senses, he says, let's go. So Elena's packing for the trip, and she's talking to Marceline about wanting to write again and how she really hasn't since she moved to the island. And Marceline confirms that a lot of people lose who they are when they come to Aplana, that it has something to do with touching the sand. But for her, it might have to do with falling in love. Elena doesn't want to hear that. She's like, I'm not falling in love. I'm not falling in love. Am I? She kind of realizes, like, she kind of does. So right before they leave, she goes back outside to talk to her garden to give them one last little word of encouragement before they go on this trip. I get it, I tell them, hoping that the bulbs can hear beneath the dirt. You're afraid of what waits for you on the other side of the soil. You're warm and comfortable where you are now, safe even. It's terrifying trying to find the courage to take the leap of faith, but you can't spend eternity hiding. Eventually you'll have to take the opportunities that are thrust upon you and trust that the universe knows what it's doing. Hope bursts like a backed up pipe in my chest, but I stuff it back down where it belongs, not wanting to entertain the thought. April is the cruelest month, I add, quoting T.S. Eliot's The Waste Land, like the flowers might appreciate the sentiment. Breeding lilacs out of the dead land, mixing memory and desire, stirring dull roots with spring rain. It's time. When I turn around, I see Cal hovering by the back gate, watching me with an unreadable expression. I approach him slowly, shame heavy in my chest. Is your garden a big T.S. Eliot fan? He asks, his face shifting into one of quiet amusement. Don't laugh, I say, glancing up at the sky, noting the clouds. The thick clouds rolling in over the ocean. Love is the greatest act of revitalization, and I happen to think poetry is the best way to relay that. And she realizes that she is in love with her husband. Not just from that scene, but when they get on the airplane, he has pomegranate syrup for her. So he makes her like a pomegranate syrup drink. I don't know, bro. The pomegranate thing seems kind of forced. I'm not gonna front. Why she got the tattoo? We never talked about that. Like, it is never revealed the pomegranate scented like shampoo and the tattoo and this like obsession with it. It's just kind of this like inherent thing, which is like, can you at least give like a character, like why does she like it? Does it stem from something? We've never touched on it. It is just this kind of, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of it. It just seems weird and overplayed. So they go to Boston. They kind of make a show of it, like knowing that all of the media outlets are going to be meeting them on the tarmac, like itching to report on the girl kidnapped by Dr. Death. So he's giving her advice on how to handle the media, and she blows it off, and it turns into flirting and talking about wanting to like do spicy stuff in front of the media, and I'm falling asleep, man. It's literally every other page that they're like thinking or doing something like sexual. They get off of the plane. I hop into the car, and they're on to her parents' house without much trouble. And the one sentence I had highlighted on here was talking about, it wouldn't matter to anyone in the outside world that I murdered an abusive prick who probably would have tried to kill her once their marriage was final, especially after they found out that she wasn't a virgin. Nor would it matter that I was trying to protect her and extract myself from this world when I did it. When presented with the bones of a monster, the general public will believe the story they're told without digging any further. It is such a shame to have such like banger sentences. It just enlaced with such smut. It makes me so angry. You know the drill. It's day 3 of recording. I will finish this today, though. We are on chapter 30 of 39, not counting the epilogue, which I haven't even read the epilogue yet, so we'll see how that goes. Dude, the amount of freaking spice in this book is disgusting. So they show up to Elena's parents' house. Her dad and sisters are still out running around, and so it's literally just Carmen, her mother, that is there to greet them. And Carmen is being a beezy. Her immediate reaction to Elena when she sees her is like, oh my god, you must have put on 10 pounds since you've been gone. And she also says that Elena is dressed like Cal's cheap flavor of the month. Like, you at least could have dressed like a Ricci. So messed up. But Elena's used to it, like that's just how her mom is. Cal pulls her close and he says, she's trying to get under your skin. He says in a low voice, only loud enough for me to hear. Don't let her have that power over you. She's just staring. Jealousy, little one. It's not as attractive on everyone as it is on you. I don't even know what she's jealous of. His mouth parts as if to answer, but in the next second, the front door's flying open. Papa and my sisters hustling inside. So then the whole fam's there. Everyone's greeting her. Everyone's happy to see her. Her dad comes up to hug her. She hugs him back. And for a moment, I can almost forget that he risked my safety by forcing my hand in marriage for personal gain. Twice. I can almost forget the fact that he overlooked years of abuse just because he so badly wanted to maintain his power in Boston and needed to maintain his power in Boston and needed the alliance with Bolenti to do so. I can forget all of that, but I don't. As I pull away from his hug, something chilly skates across my skin, a foreboding sensation that makes me a little queasy, like I'm chasing something that doesn't deserve to be caught. And then her sisters approach her, and they're like, okay, officially, we've gone way too long without seeing you, Ariana says. She pushes back, grabs my biceps, and does a once-over. Although we need to talk about how you're f***ing glowing, E. You have to be getting a healthy dose of vitamin D. Wink, wink. And so then their dad loses his mind about, like, Ariana alluding to them, you know, doing stuff. And so then the sisters get whisked away. They pretty much get, like, kicked out of the room. And then after giving me one last air-stealing hug, my youngest sister disappears in the same direction as Papa and my middle sister went. The dull thud of her sneakers the only sound for several minutes. Then a door slams shut, and suddenly it's just the three of us drowning in silence. So we cut to chapter 31 from Cal's perspective, and he initially thinks, I let the silence filling the Ricci's living room soak into my skin for a moment, appreciating it while I can, aware that Carmen has a knack for shattering things. If hearts were made of glass, the remaining pieces of mine would be jagged and splintered, wholly incapable of being glued back together. Carmen tells them to have a seat. Elena pushes back. She's like, no, we're good. Carmen says, did Callum ruin my sweet innocent daughter's manners? Elena says, the way that you disrespected my marriage by spreading rumors and lying to tabloids about its nature. Frowning, Carmen says nothing for a beat, and I practically see the cogs turning in her brain, searching for a way to turn the tables and make herself out to be the victim. She's got that fucking glint in her eye, the one that flared to life each time that she would show up at whatever house I was renting after I'd turned 18. Sobbing with mascara smeared down her cheeks, begging for me to forgive her for being weak when it came to her husband. It was always the children need their papa, and he'll hunt me down and kill me if I leave. Never the truth, which was just that she never intended to leave Raphael in the first place. She had her cake and she wanted to eat it too. Meanwhile, I should have never been subjected to her bullshit in the first place. I had no business fielding the guilt of a much older and more experienced woman. I shouldn't have been cake. I should have been a goddamn kid. But when that's all you know, when someone manipulates you during your formative years, it's a tough cycle to break away from. So Elena pushes back. They have a little bit of a tiff until it becomes Carmen responding. Are you saying that I was unwarranted? All things considered, you were uprooted from your life. Mateo was dead. I was worried for your safety. I was never in danger. Papa signed the freaking marriage certificate. Excuse me? God, did he not tell you? Elena asks, and I suddenly feel faint for the first time since my first hit. Throat working as she swallows. Carmen's eyes dart to mine, hurt reflecting there, still trying to call out to me. It's true. I shrug, ignoring the pain pooling in her irises. It does nothing for me. Setting her gaze on the coffee table in front of her, she presses her fingers to her lips, her gaze unfocusing as she gets lost in her thoughts, probably trying to figure out how she can wield this new information against us. That's not possible. She decides finally, with a little shake of her head. Your father wouldn't just allow you to marry Callum. Well, Mama, he did, and when Callum leaves Boston again in a few days, I'm going with him. Like hell, Carmen blinks. Not letting her say another word, Elena spins on her heel and trudges away from the room. The front door bangs closed, echoing off of the ceiling. Gritting her teeth, Carmen glares at Cal and approaches him. And he says, yeah, yo, bitch, don't get any closer to me. She says, what are you going to do? Kill me? Laughing while she runs a shaky hand through her hair, freeing some of the strands from where they're trapped inside the collar of her robe. Good luck getting Elena to forgive you. And then it goes on this really inappropriate thing where he says, and again, I hate that I have to read this stuff on the internet, but this is the life I chose. She would learn to, I said, my lips curling up at the corners. A couple of rides on my... And she'd forget all about her cold, vindictive bitch of a mother. You haven't told her, have you? I'll give it to you. She's a very pliant girl, eager and willing, the way that Raphael and I brought her up to be. But I don't think she would forgive you for sleeping with her mother. Tell her and I'll slit your fucking throat. As much as I'm sure you'd love to, we both know that you won't. I know the look in your eyes, Callum. You care about Elena. Moreover, you care what she thinks of you, and I think that we both know that there's no coming back from something like this. When I don't say anything to refute the matter, knowing she'll just twist my words somehow, she laughs, throwing her head back like this is all some big fucking joke. Well, I guess you'd better do it before I do then. So he then, after she says this, he contemplates the logistics of murdering Carmen, and he decides to let it lay. He made his threat, and so he moves on. He goes out to the SUV where Elena went to. She's just laying there kind of complaining to Marceline about life, and he picks Elena up and sits under her, and they talk a little bit, and they go back to the hotel and they do spicy stuff. During the night though, Raphael comes and he confronts Cal, and it's pretty much like, you owe me money, bro, you're screwing me over, you still work for me. And Cal's like, I don't work for you, B word. I don't work for anybody. You haven't hired me for anything. And Cal's like, that's not how this works. You owe me money. And then he just shuts the door in his face. And Raphael doesn't do anything. So, press on, King. I don't know. Good for you, Raph. Or good for you, Cal. Chapter 32 is from Elena's perspective, and it's the next day. And she's at lunch with her sisters. It's just banter, they're just kind of talking, and they make a mention, though, the sisters do, about their mother having an affair. They don't say who it was with, just that it happened, and they think that their dad's currently having an affair, just because he's acting weird. But Elena is totally blindsided by all of this information. She's like very, very disgusted by it. And then later in the day, that was lunch. For dinner, they have it back at her family's house. And she notes how much, like, the family dinners were such a huge deal while she was growing up. Anytime they had it, it was like completely extravagant. They would bring out the finest china. They would have like more food than like possibly necessary. And they would always invite all kinds of people, be it classmates or coworkers or like partners in different deals, whatever it was. There was always like absolute bustling for this dinner time. It was never less than like 8 people, 10 people. This time, it's just her parents, her sisters, her grandma, her, and Cal. She's like, the family must be struggling. Like, this is the first time that she's really being like directly faced with like, oh, I think my parents are struggling with money. I see what my sisters are saying. Like, there's something going on that's like deeper than this. And so she feels very uncomfortable, kind of about that, kind of about the weird tension last night. Just in general, she doesn't really want to be there. So Cal is like, little one, we can leave whenever you want to. You just say the word. And so she's like, no, it's fine. I'll deal with it, whatever. So they go to the table to sit down. And traditionally, her mother and father would sit at either end of the table. And then the girls would sit on one side and then the guests on the other, or like however it would be set up. Cal, though, in true pissing contest fashion, decides to sit in Carmen's seat, directly across from Raphael. And so they're like daggers completely the entire time. And so she calls them out on this, and she says, why are you locked in some sort of dick measuring contest with my father right now? Mine's bigger. Contest over. Ew, what is going on with you two? What the hell? Her dad breaks the silence, and he's like, oh, like, how's school going? She says, I dropped out. Excuse me? I didn't want to do it anymore. Teaching literature didn't interest me. And so her dad gets pissed and makes it very clear that he is. He's like, oh, so you decided to quit and not tell the one who's paying your student loans? Like, who might have to pay them earlier now that you dropped out of school? Like, you just didn't want to communicate that at all. You didn't want to let me know, especially after I'm the one that told you that you shouldn't go to school? Like, that's super shitty of you. And she apologizes. And she's like, I hadn't even thought about that. And her mother comes in. Of course you didn't, because you're still an immature, selfish little girl. Mama's voice interrupts the quiet din of the patio atmosphere, and for once I hear the malice threaded in her words. It's not disguised at all in her tone. And when she rounds the table in a floor-length, bright red evening gown, I see it written on her face. The woman who helped me get ready for my wedding and the woman standing here are not the same person, not even a little bit. Or maybe the problem is that I'm different. Cal shoves back from the table, making the dishes clatter with force. Murder rims his dark eyes, setting them aflame. Carmen. Oh, come on, Cal. I know my daughter. She's quite the chip off the old block, wouldn't you say? Papa rubs his temple, sighing. Carmen, what are you doing? Sitting in the chair at his side, her grin grows, stretching wide across her face that it looks painful. She swirls her wine in her glass, gesturing toward my sisters. Girls, why don't you take Nona up for a nap? So the girls and Grandma leave, so it's just the 4 of them. So Elena, once the sisters all leave and whatever, she says, I was going to tell you. It slipped my mind with everything else. Yes, Mama says, leaning back in her chair. Hard to remember important things like who your family really is when you're too busy spreading your legs for the first man who ever pretended to care about you. What's wrong with that? He's my husband, after all. Because your father wanted him away from me. What the... Well, hello? So, we cut to Elena's perspective. And Elena's like... It's this motion, right? She's like slow-mo falling into the world of like, what is my mother saying to me? What is happening at this table right now? What the fuck? And her dad, Papa, grumbling... drawing an imaginary cross over his chest. My decision had nothing to do with you f***ing him over 10 years ago, Carmen. Christ. Okay, we're just laying this shit out in the open. Okay. Carmen says, oh dear, did I expose some of Callum's dirty laundry? You two just looked so cozy together. I couldn't fathom that he hadn't told you about our affair yet. Our affair. The phrase tastes bitter on my tongue, like biting into fruit that hasn't quite ripened yet, all because you couldn't stand to be patient. Just another day, a little extra self-control, and you might have bitten into something juicy and delectable. Instead, you're left with a dull flavor of your mistakes, wondering why the man that you've fallen in love with shares anything with another, much less your mother. I hope that you guys are tuned in and that you are listening right now. Cal interjects, except I told you the other night that she didn't know. Did you? It must have slipped my mind. We talked about so many things. Looking at the hollow of Cal's throat, the divot I've run my tongue over more times than I can count at this point, I lick my lips, afraid to go any higher. When did you speak to my mother? He flattens his palms on the table, his wedding band catching in the light. You knew about this. It was the other night, right after you went outside. Ah, yes, when you so kindly tossed him into my waiting arms. Carmen! Papa snaps, rubbing his hand over his face. What the fuck are you doing? And then Cal is like, the only way that I would have been tossed into your arms is if they were torn from your body and set on fire. And even then, would it be so that I could join you in the afterlife and personally drop you on Satan's doorstep? There's hatred in his voice, venom spewing from the tip of his tongue, but I grew up on the principle of thought that love and hate were always just two sides of the same coin. The only difference was circumstance, and as my eyes volley between Cal and my mother, one a rabid beast ready to destroy its prey, and the other a hungry predator looking to feast, I realize that I can't quite tell where the two lie in regard to that coin. What a good paragraph to interlay between, like, such stupid shit that didn't need to be written. You slept with my mother? I ask. Well, there never really was much sleeping involved, if you know what I mean. I certainly hope that you two are much better with contraception than we were, because I'll tell you, that man is potent, if you know what I mean. Oops, did I say that twice? Cal, he says, Jesus Christ, you really are such a bitch. And then he asks Elena to have a moment. He wants to pull her off to the side, and Elena kind of blows it off. Just totally dissociating at this moment. Girl, I'd have been, that was me like 30 minutes ago, girl. Proud of you for lasting this long. And she says, if you'll excuse me, I choke out woodenly. I don't want to be late for Ari's recital. I feel 3 pairs of eyes on me. I feel the surprise from all of them. Elena, Papa says, and I hear his chair scrape across the concrete, creaking as he stands. We should probably talk about this. And she keeps going. Turning on my heel, I sidestep my chair and I head back into the house, passing through the kitchen. I swipe my purse and coat from the sofa in the living room, almost making it to the front door before a hand grabs my wrist, yanking me backward. Don't you dare leave this house without talking to me, Cal snaps, turning me around so that I'm facing him. We don't do that. Girl, what the If you've watched any of my other videos, you know how I feel about a man grabbing a woman. I would kill a man for less. So she said, trying to twist out of his grip, I snarl. We don't do anything. Don't tell me to open up about how I'm feeling when you're the one that's been lying to me the entire time that I've known you. When would be a good time to bring it up? I couldn't very well be buried in your and casually dredge up the fact that I've seen your mother in a similar state. The sentence burns as it slaps across my face. Worse than if he just killed me on the spot. At least the pain would likely be over soon. Well, lucky for you, she cut out the middleman and did it for you. Solved that dilemma real quick, didn't it? Oh, fuck, man. So then her sister comes downstairs and is going early to the recital to go, like, set up and practice. And so Elena tags along. She gets her escape out of this hell house. And in chapter 34, Cal goes back to confront Carmen about everything that just happened. And he goes back out there, up to the patio. Raphael's disappeared, probably off to light another cigar, leaving just me and his wife. Carmen slurps at her wine, clearly beyond incapacitated, and giggles. Trouble in paradise, my love? Give me one reason why I shouldn't gut you right here, right now. My God, you were never good at flirting. One reason, Carmen. Reaching for the waistband of my pants, I slide my hand around, dislodging the gun tucked in the back. Smoothing my fingers over the cool metal barrel, I unlock the safety and cock it, pointing it at her mouth. Doesn't have to be a good one necessarily, but you'd better think real fucking fast before I make the decision for you. She doesn't even flinch, as if unaware that none of my threats are ever hollow. Fixing her strap with a sharp snap against her skin, she sits up straighter, giving me a bland look. You're not going to kill me, Callum. If you were, you would have done it the second that you found me in bed with someone else. That's the only noise I can make to anything that's happening. Okay. Sorry. Okay, tune it in. You're not going to kill me, Callum. If you were, you would have done it the second that you found me in bed with someone else. My side throbs spastically, like the flesh is being carved open all over again after finding myself on the other end of an ambush. In my own home. It was a rival family member, someone from Southie. If I'd been expecting either one of them to be in my bed, he wouldn't have had the upper hand. But you don't expect the people that you care about to betray you right under your nose. I remember the searing pain where the knife went in, thinking that it would be the end of it. At that point, I hadn't long been doing lethal hits, and torture certainly wasn't anything that I had thought of when doing Rishi jobs. So when the knife entered, stayed in, and began to move, I remember the shock absorbing the brunt of the initial torment. I remember waking up mid-surgery, after an anonymous tip alerted the cops to my state. They'd been so concerned with the loss of blood and possible abrasions to my liver and spleen that no one had bothered to clean the wound or tried to free some of the broken muscle that would eventually produce the mass of scar tissue on my side. I remember the pain after surgery. They called it phantom pangs. Said that I would probably feel them for the rest of my life, long after everything else had healed. They said that I was lucky, that a guardian angel had been watching over me, because the damage to my spleen had been pretty significant, but they'd managed to repair the rupture. It was my 19th birthday. I never felt lucky. Not one time in my life, even with the countless brushes with death, did I feel lucky, until I met Elena. All Carmen ever made me feel was sick. She never even told me why she did it, though I assumed it was because she could. Damn! Raising my arm, I point the pistol at her forehead. We can remedy that mistake now. I certainly don't want to make the same one twice. Elena will never forgive you for killing her mother. She's hurt now, but she knows who's always been there for her. She'll choose this family over a stranger. You took her away from me, so that little fear tactic doesn't really apply anymore, does it? What do I care if she forgives me if she's not going to be warming my bed and cock at night? Ow. As crude and vile as ever, I see. I move closer, brushing my index finger over the trigger. You know it's crude. The number of times that I've told your daughter to get on her knees and watched her choke on me. How I've broken her skin and lapped at her blood so many times the flavor is practically embedded in my taste buds. She gets off on it, you know, the pain. Never looks at me like I'm sick or deranged or some kind of monster. I bet if I got her pregnant right now, oh shit. Sorry. I bet if I got her pregnant right now, she wouldn't eliminate the problem and make me feel like I've done something wrong. You were the adult. I didn't fucking know what I was doing. Oh, please. You were hardly really a child, Callum. Do you know why I did it, Carmen? Do you get why I chose her? It's because she's as fucked up as me. You can't talk about my daughter that way. The sound of a dull pop cracks against the air like a whip, and Carmen shrieks loudly, jolting in her seat. Even long after the realization sets in that a blank was fired, she still screams, the ear-piercing noise quickly becoming an irritant to my already frayed nerves. I'll talk about my wife any way that I please, because you know what was really vile here tonight, Carmen? What you did was vile, and I didn't care so much. If I didn't care so much about your daughter and how this might affect her, you'd be drifting to the bottom of the Charles River right now for fucking everything up so spectacularly. She's sobbing, she's crying, she's apologizing, whatever, blaming him, and like he's like, I should feel bad, but I feel nothing. Like, and Carmen's still sobbing, fake tears staining her cheeks, and I drop the gun slightly, shaking my head. It's a nice sentiment, but it's an entire decade too late, and frankly, I don't want your explanation or your love. The only one who deserves it is Elena, because she's the one who cares about you. Flicking my wrist back, I whip it forward, lashing the barrel of the gun against her cheekbone, reveling in the familiar crack that resounds at the impact. She screams, her hands flying to her face, and she chokes on her saliva. Let that be your fucking lesson here. You get to live because I don't care enough to kill you. So he tries to leave. He runs into Raphael in the hallway, and Raphael is like, You didn't mean to fire a warning shot, did you? Said more as a statement than a question. And Callum says, you know the answer. Raphael rebuttals. It's not really a rebuttal. I guess he just comments back. He says, I'll kill the kidnapping story if you pay what you owe me, which is $250,000, by the way, $250,000. We cut to chapter 35, and this entire chapter, in short, he goes to the theater to find Elena, like he goes to the ballet thing, and they have a private box neighboring their parents, or her parents' box. He's the first one there, like, along with her, and so he goes up there, and they try to have a private moment, but she's totally blowing him off. Like, she's very frustrated about the whole thing, and, yeah, just kind of ignoring him, telling him to leave her alone, and the show starts, and all he can hear is, like, people chattering and people opening food bags, and this, like, again, getting very overstimulated and overwhelmed with all these little noises that are happening, that Elena picks up on it, and she's like, hey, like, are you okay? And he, like, pushes back, and she's like, well, sorry for caring. And then he's like, don't ever apologize for that. And then they end up having loud, boisterous intercourse, ensuring that her parents can hear them verbally talking through it, because she's sticking it to the man. She's doing it on purpose to make her mother jealous, to get back at her mom for having relations with her husband. I don't know. I don't know what's happening. I don't know why people read this. I don't know what the fuck. I don't know what's going on. And so during this, like, scene between the two of them in this box, he carves the letter A into her thigh, right next to the K for, like, Cal Anderson. And that's what pushes her over the edge. And so then when he finishes, she immediately pushes him off, and she's like, I'm gonna go to the bathroom and clean up. And so she does, and 5 minutes go by. 10 minutes go by, and Cal realizes that she's not coming back, that was her goodbye and fuck you to him and to her parents. And so he goes looking for her, like, all through the theater, right? All the bathrooms, all the stalls, all the closets, absolutely everywhere. And he finally comes across her cell phone and a poem that she left behind. And she's nowhere to be seen, though. Her phone that he bought her, by the way, right? Because when he kidnapped her, he gave her a new one, so she left it behind. And in the poem, it says, I loved thee, though I told thee not. Right earlily and long, thou wert my joy in every spot, my theme in every song. I stand in that stall far longer than I should, reading and rereading John Clare's words, unable to shake the irony of how we seem to have come full circle. I wonder if it felt this crippling for her when I was the one who left. Back to the whole sisters' lunchtime thing. Elena, Ariana, Stella, her sisters, they're all vibing at lunch. So Elena opens up to her sisters about how much that she does love Cal, and it was whatever, and then also how he had an affair with their mother. And the girls are like, hey, like, that was grooming. They use that word. They straight up, they call it out. And she's like, oh my God, I never thought of that before, actually. Like, I never actually considered him a victim. What are you gonna do? Stella asks me, sipping her water. You're not in school and your marriage is in limbo. Are you gonna go after him? He slept with our mom, Stella. Ariana shoots her a look. Big ick. Stella rolls her eyes. It was, over a decade ago? It's not like he left his relationship with mom and immediately went to Elena. It sounds like he was a kid for most of it, which is, like, super gross. If you love him, then you love him, plain and simple. That doesn't just go away no matter the circumstances. And so that makes Elena realize, yeah, he was abused, like, he was groomed, and I do love him. I guess I'm gonna go find him again. But she doesn't go find him again. She instead, like, hey, she's 20. she wants him to chase after her. And so she stays at like her grandma's secret house that she has in the city. It's like some apartment thing that she has where she doesn't think anyone can find her, but she tries to hide away. So I don't hear from Cal for the rest of the time that I'm in Boston. A week passes and then another, and still nothing. And so she decides that she's going to go back home and pick up some things from her like childhood home with her parents and her sisters. And according to my sisters, Mama's been staying at her sister's in Roxbury, not having been back to the house since the night of the recital. So on that day, I returned to pack away some more sentimental items in my bedroom. I'm a little stunned to find her sitting on the four-poster bed, flipping through the worn pages of Edgar Allan Poe's complete works. I walk inside, and she doesn't glance up. I stand there, frozen, noting the faded yellow bruise dusting her right cheek from where she said she slipped on an ice patch on her way to the recital. My heart skips a beat, knowing better, but trying to not read too much into that. You know, I specifically asked your father when you were born to not teach you Italian. I knew from the moment that I laid eyes on you that you were a force to be reckoned with. There was immediately so much strength and tenacity and fire in your beautiful eyes present in the lungs every time that you cried. I worked overtime to undermine any potential advantage that you could have over me. I was jealous of a baby, my baby, because I knew that she was going to grow up with opportunities and beauty and grace that I was never allowed. Everyone who met you was so captivated by this aura that you had, this brightness that drew them to you, and you were so good at everything that you tried. Reading, writing, creating, even gardening, which I never mastered. Sometimes it seemed like you would just walk into a room and plants would bloom. It felt like I was living in my daughter's shadow, and your father certainly was never any help. He told you to jump and you asked how high, desperate to be the perfect little girl in that man's eyes. When your father met Cal, we could tell he needed a lot. His mother had just died and he had no other family, so when we took him in and we made him feel like one of our own. I remember the first time that I felt maybe he was confused about his feelings toward me, trying to work through them, and I took advantage of it. I soaked up all the attention that he gave me because your father certainly didn't give me any. And it felt good. After I had you and Ariana, I wanted to feel needed again. I wanted to feel wanted again. I needed that. When I found out that he decided to marry you, I couldn't believe it. Not because you weren't lovable, but you were doing exactly what I'd always been afraid that you would do, taking everything that had once belonged to me. He didn't belong to you, I mutter. When she doesn't reply, I continue louder. Is this why you pushed the kidnapping story to punish me for something that wasn't even my fault? She nods. And so then they have a little bit more back and forth, and Elena decides to slap her mom. Whack? That's for trying to ruin my marriage. Second whack, that's for ruining my childhood and trying to ruin my adulthood. And then she fists up. She punches her mother, closed fist, in the cheek, in the bruised cheek, by the way. All three of these hits. And that is for Cal. You don't hurt the people that you love. You don't go out of your way to make them suffer. Damn, bro. And so then they keep having a little bit of back and forth. And not even back and forth. Mom's just crying. Elena's just going on her soapbox, talking about, like, her mom being a bitch. I pull my new phone out, unlocking the screen and opening the draft email I worked on before my arrival. After spending the entire first few days of the recital writing down my feelings, I began writing down other things, too. Everything that I knew about Ricci Incorporated. I used to want that from you, too. I adjust a couple of the finer points, adding more incriminating evidence, and push send. But then I realized that monsters aren't capable of returning love. And the longer that you spend chasing it from someone who cannot ever give it back, the more of a monster you become in turn. What is happening? We have 2 chapters left. 3 chapters left. Chapter 37. Cal goes back to the island. Jonas is at the island to meet him. They're drinking. Jonas is giving him a hard time, like, oh, where's your wife at? Like, where you been, man? What's going on? Cal reveals that he has dissolved the trust. And he did so because he's like, I know that Violet is never going to accept the money that I want to give her. I'm over it. So he dissolves the trust so that he can pull the money out and then use that money to pay off Raphael to pay off his connection to the Ricci's. So by paying the money that he owes them, he's able to exit the whole shindig. And so they're going to go back through and like erase all connections that he has with them. He's done. He's out of the mafia. What the hell? On paper, I won't exist to these guys. When the feds come for Ricci Inc., at least I'll be left out as long as they'll expunge my name from their records. My reputation, the power my name holds, though, that doesn't go away. Notoriety is forever my friend. I'm just stepping back from the more public aspect of things. So Jonas pushes back about the whole wife thing, and he says, seeing as she won't be my wife much longer, I suppose it doesn't matter. Cut to a little bit in the future. Homeboy's just moping. He's just moping around the house, avoiding any place that reminds him of Elena and, like, I don't know, just being sad boy. And Marceline's like, you need to get your shit together, guy. You're annoying me. He goes outside one day and he sees Violet. She's been stalking his house. She's been using her friends, parents, like, frequent flyer miles to fly out to the island constantly to try and catch him, and then she chickens out of it, but whatever. She's there now and she's talking to him, and it turns out that her bank account got closed. Like, it got flagged for fraud because of how many deposits were trying to go into it that got denied because of him. And he's like, you don't have to worry about it anymore. Like, I'm done trying to give you money that you don't want. And she's like, oh, bankruptcy? And he's like, not bankruptcy. I'm learning to listen to people. Like, if you don't want it, you don't want it. And she's like, I'm sorry. It's just a touchy subject. Like, money's a touchy subject. And he's like, yeah, I get it. Like, whatever. So they kind of move on. In the middle of their pretty cute back and forth, Elena comes up and she says, what the fuck is this? So in the next chapter, from Elena's perspective, she's confronting him and she's like, Callum, what the fuck is this? And she's holding up these papers to him and he says, looks like an envelope, Elena. How the hell should I know what's in it? And Violet's like, I'm gonna go, guys. I'll see you later. Thanks, brother. And it turns out that this motherfucker, being Callum, served her annulment papers. He knew where she was. He knew that she was at her grandmother's house, or like her grandma's like secret apartment thing in the city. He had gone to it a couple of times and like was always right about to knock, and he didn't want to. He wanted to, but he decided not to because from his perspective, Elena has never had a choice in anything in her life. She never had a choice in who she married or like what would be next for her. And so he wanted to give her that opportunity. And so he sent her annulment papers of like, here you go. You don't have to be forced into anything anymore. He was at fault in the divorce. He says, I thought it would be what you wanted, little one. Freedom. You're young. You deserve the chance to experience what life has to offer. How dare you try to decide that for me? You only present me with one option after ghosting me completely after the recital. That's supposed to be my choice? I have so many problems with that sentence, but he combats it with an even more problematic sentence, which is, you ditched me at the fucking ballet, Elena. Nice touch, by the way, leaving the poem. I got your message loud and clear. Oh, the poem where I said that I'm in love with you? If that's somehow translated into please file for an annulment, then I think that you need to go back to studying poetry again. And then she goes back to the whole, like, you don't get to blame me for this. Like, you're the one that fucked up. Stop blaming me. A bunch of back and forth. And would anybody be surprised that it results in a spice scene? That they just end up doing it on the front porch? Anybody? I'm so tired. I'm so tired of reading about his COCK. They, whatever, like, hook up, and then they decide to go inside, and I swallow thickly, awareness prickling on my side, realizing that he's likely waiting for me to go first, and I open my mouth to speak, but he beats me to it. I'm in love with you, Elena. Well, as far as apologies go, that's a pretty good place to start. He sighs, a small laugh falling from his lips, startling me in how genuine it sounds. And all the time that I've spent with him, I've never heard an actual laugh come from those vocal cords. And the onset of it now causes butterflies to erupt in my chest. He says, I don't deserve you, you know that? Subjective, but go on. When I was a kid, I grew up shrinking myself to make space for my mother and her illness. It needed the attention, needed the focus, so that's where the majority of everyone's time and energy went. They came to visit my mother, came to talk to my mother, and I just slunk into the shadows, trying my best to not begrudge her any more than I already did. Cancer is a funny disease in that it inspires jealousy in some people. There, my mother was, slowly decaying, and I had the fucking nerve to resent her for leaving me like she had the choice in the matter. My heart aches, breaking with each word that he speaks. My hands itch to comfort, to relieve his pain, but I know I need to hear this too. You cannot love a person fully without knowing the darkness etched into their soul. I want to know his so well that it becomes my darkness too. I met your parents about a year before she passed, and when she finally did, I went looking for my biological father, hoping that he'd, take me in, I guess. Long story short, he wasn't interested in a fourth kid, so I fell victim to the system and I found myself in a foster home in Boston. Sometime after that, your father approached me on the street and offered me a job. I don't need to go into all the details of the beginning of my career, but the point is that I was starved for attention when I met your parents. Your dad gave me a life of luxury, and for a kid that quite literally had nothing, the hero worship came easily. Your mother, well, she gave me the affection that I'd been lacking from my own, and I guess the attraction just kind of spiraled from there. I should have told you about my history with her, but anytime I thought about saying the words out loud and reliving that part of me, I don't have any excuse, except that when I was with you, I didn't want to remember any of that. My hatred, my desire for revenge became background noise, and then it just seemed too late to say anything at all. She abused you, Cal. They both did. They both stole an impressionable boy off the streets and manipulated him to be their little puppet. It wasn't like, Cal, you didn't know any better. They were supposed to teach you, and they taught you wrong. Okay, why is that gonna get me? And so then she touches his side, and she asks if she did that to him. And he's like, well, kind of like indirectly. And, Elena's like, I hate that she did that to you. I hate that she saw you like this. And Cal's like, she didn't see me like this. You're the only one that's ever seen me naked, baby. She reveals that she shared the, incriminating information with the media outlets, and she's like, fuck my parents. And he's like, oh my god, that's so hot, you crazy bitch, I love you. She's like, no more annulment. And he's like, absolutely fucking not. And then in the following chapter 39, we are wrapping this shit up, he reveals that he paid them off. He finally tells her, I'm not a part of any of it. I paid them off. I'm done. And she kind of feels bad because she didn't consider how her reporting them would affect him and how that would affect his medical career. And he's like, my medical career has, nothing to do with them. I did that on my own. I earned that. And she's like, well, why aren't you a doctor? And so then he reveals on page 326 of this book, literally, the very end of it, that he has a condition, misophonia. I don't know how to say it. I hope that was correct. It's a psychological aversion to certain sounds. I know that they've obviously alluded to it throughout the entirety of the book, but why is that revealed on literally the second to last page? And so he talks about, because this aversion to sounds, that's why he chose to not be a doctor. What do you want me to say? The second half of the chapter, he goes back to Ivers International. Did you forget about them? I did. That was the security firm that he had hired to research the thumb drive to figure out who had been blackmailing him. And so he goes there and he's like, oh, I need to figure out, it's a few weeks after Elena's been on the island. I need to go back and figure out who's blackmailing me and get to the bottom of this. So he goes there. The receptionist isn't in there, and so they ignore him, and he's ringing the bell but nobody answers. And so he goes up to the offices and he finds the head honcho guy, his protege, and he opens up the door and he's like, I don't like to be huh? Cutting off abruptly when I open the door, I freeze in my tracks, more than a little stunned by the petite blonde sitting behind the large oak desk, her black Converse propped up on the wooden surface. Surprised, mostly because the last time I saw her, she'd been in a coma, broken and bloody and struggling to find the subconscious will to wake up. Riley, I breathed, my knees buckling at the girl in front of me, the sister of Boyd Kelly, head of Ivers International Security Team. You sure do know how to make a girl wait. What are you doing here? Where's your brother? Boyd's having an extended lunch with his girlfriend. I was the one who invited you to meet. What? You wanted to know who your blackmailer was, she says, leaning forward and sliding a familiar flash drive across the desk, tapping it as it reaches me. I stare at the drive and I look up at her. You? A smile widens on her face, but it looks strained. Kind of crazy how much I've picked up in such a short time. I guess that's the perk of being around hackers and IT people all the time now. Amazing what you can find out about a person just by doing a little digging. Even someone as private as you, Doctor. Is that so? She nods, producing another flash drive. This one slightly different from the one that she just handed me. It's the same one I gave Raphael the day that I convinced him to give me Elena, my flash drive. I look at her, taking it, slipping it into my breast pocket, aware that this makes her the only other person in the world to know my dirtiest secret. Initially, there was no one blackmailing Ricci Incorporated at all. It was me. My mind whirls trying to process what she's saying, how an 18-year-old girl has held me by the balls for these last few months, but more importantly, why? She gulps when I ask that, sitting up in her seat. I could ask my brother, but you specialize in secrecy, right? Well, I did something bad, and I need to disappear. The end. That's the end of the book. What do you want? What do you want? Hey, what do you want? I don't know, dude. So then the epilogue. Hey, is anyone surprised she has a kid? I feel like that's literally every single epilogue in every single romance that I've ever read in my entire life. It's annoying, though. It's very annoying and it's very cliche, and I hate it, and I'm not reading it. There's reference to Olympus. They named their daughter Quincy. Is that something Greek adjacent? I don't know. Do I care? No. Do I care that that book clearly alludes to a secondary one in a series? No. I think the plot was interesting. Did I like anything in this book? I said earlier, very cockily, that's not the right word, very arrogantly, that this was maybe a 4-star mafia book, and then I knocked off points for the grooming and for the weird shit. I think I'm so blindsided with some paragraphs, some sentences, some whatever of like, it could be so well written, and some of it is, and then it is just like completely buried by smut and by insanity that feels so unnecessary that, again, I so genuinely to my core hope that Sav is doing this because she likes to write this stuff and not because she feels that she needs to write that sort of material to be popular. Please, girl, please. Write a normal, sane book. You are so talented. You have a way with words, obviously. You have a love for poetry. You have beautiful writing. Please use it for good. Can you see my knuckles? Can you see me white knuckling in frustration right now? I hate to see good writers wasted on crazy shit like this, unless it's what they want to do. Hey, no shame. I'm not here to yuck anyone's yum, but some of y'all's yums are very yucky. I don't know. Was it a good book? It was okay. The plot's interesting. I thought it was good. I felt like it was a little overplayed about the Hades and Persephone thing. I felt like it was a little forced. Like, the connections and allusions to it were very direct. It wasn't like if they would have never said anything about pomegranates, Hades and Persephone directly, or like Olympus and Elysium or the Elysian Fields, or the Afshadel, whatever the fucking word is I can't think of right now. If they never would have said any of those words, would I have thought this was a Hades and Persephone thing? Probably not. So that's where I'm like, meh, dude. I don't know. I kind of want to read more of her books because, again, it's good writing. Just like, don't be creepy. I feel like I'm not asking for a lot. The spice would have been okay, I think, if I would have gone into this expecting it or wanting that. It's just not what I wanted. It has a 3.5 on Goodreads. Honest to God, I really think this would be significantly higher on Goodreads if it didn't have the mom thing going, which wasn't necessary. It could have been some other lady. He didn't have to... Oh, Mom. He could have been groomed by another adult. If that was so critical to have. Why? My guy, come on. That's how I feel. That's how I feel about this book. If I had to summarize this book in 4 words, it would be, my guy, come on. I think I'm just at a solid 3 or 2.5 for this book. even now, after all this reflection and re-talking about it, I think that's where I'm living. Anyway, that was another Read, Rant, Review for you freaks. It's another one in the books. It's another rant review done. Please like, comment, subscribe. Let me know if there's any books that you want to hear me complain about and cry about next. And I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching. I appreciate your time.